Okay, Chairman, we're now streaming to YouTube.
Right, thank you very much, Fiona. Okay, everybody, welcome. Good evening to you all. Sorry. Yes, good evening to you all, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee. And we've got quite a long agenda tonight, so I did warn you at the last meeting, so we'll crack on. My name is Councillor David Beeman, and I'm the chairman of this committee. I'm supported this evening by a number of officers: Zach Elwood, the head of planning and economic development, I hope; Beth Howland-Smith, the development manager; Lewis Jones, planning lawyer; Chris French, who is still not here yet, but he's the area team leader; Philippa Stadden, the senior planning officer; Carl Housden, the planning officer; Gemma Patterson, the planning officer; and Kimberly Soames, the democratic services officer, who will be taking the minutes. And also, of course, John Rubini, who's the vice chair. Won't feel this time around. Okay, members and officers, please use the hand raise function within Zoom to indicate that if you wish to speak. Please keep yourself on mute when you are not speaking. Please can I ask also that any questions are kept brief, especially tonight, I think, and to the point. We'll be timing everybody this speeches this evening, and an alarm will sound when you've been speaking for 4 minutes. If any members in the meeting lose their connection temporarily, we will pause for a short time to allow them to rejoin the meeting. If the webcast streams fail, then we'll also have to adjourn until we're able to reset the connection. Okay, right, we're starting. Okay, agenda. First of all, apologies for absence and substitutes. Kim, are there any apologies that have to be received? Where's she gone? I'm not aware of any apologies.
Chairman, I think all the committee members are present, so
Yeah.
No apologies in those substitutes.
Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. I'll just ask you to note the minutes of the last meeting held on the 21st of July, which are published on the council's website. Is everybody agreed with them with that? Yes?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. I forgot to ask Kim, are there any declarations of interest been received before the meeting? Apart from me? Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, John Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to declare a non-pecuniary advantage, WA 20200029. That's the Hill Road application. I've worked to know the complainant, Peter Hampson, so it's a non-pecuniary.
Okay. And I have declared an interest in regarding 767, which is, I think, sorry, I better read it out, actually. I'd like to declare, and if thought appropriate, formally record a non-pecuniary interest in planning application WA 202007, 2 Ridgeway Cottages, Runwick Lane, which is located in the ward that I represent, Fan Castle. I've called the application in to be determined by the Area Planning Committee, given the issues raised after I was contacted by one of the objectors. I have not, however, provided any assistance to the objector other than to advise on general procedures and advise that I have not predetermined this decision, my decision. I have an open mind. I'll make the decision on the evidence and debate when this application is discussed. Okay, any other one? Any other application declaration of interest, please? No. Okay.
Chairman, if I might.
Yes, sure.
I've got my name down to speak. I do know Mr. Hampson from a previous occupation 25 years ago, but there is no.
You're speaking as a ward councillor, you're not a member of the committee. So I don't think you have to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions by members of the public? Any questions received from members of the public? No.
None, Chairman.
Okay. Questions from members? Any questions from members received?
None, Chairman.
Okay. Any relevant updates to government guidance? We have a speaker on this actually, or legislation since the last meeting. This was going to be Chris French.
It's me, Chairman.
Hello, Beth. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Well, yes, Beth. What can you tell us?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Last meeting of the Western Area Planning, the Western Planning Committee, sorry, Zach, the head of Planning and Economic Development, advised members that the business and planning bill was journeying through with a view to receiving royal assent very shortly. That received royal assent on the 22nd of July. So it is now the Business and Planning Act. It covers a range of mechanisms aimed predominantly to assist in the recovery from the COVID crisis. It covers things like outdoor seating, which will be administered by the council's licensing team. It also, more pertinent to planning, looks to extend the life of a planning permission and list of building consents which have lapsed or are due to lapse between the 23rd of March and the 31st of December, and that's until the 1st of May next year. Any planning permissions which have lapsed since the 23rd of March 2020 can be reinstated and extended subject to an additional environmental approval. And there's further details on that online on the NPPG. A further change is the temporary and fast track deemed consent route for developers to extend or vary their construction hours. Local planning authorities have 14 days to turn those requests around, but they will exclude public and bank holidays as a matter of course, and they will be in place until the 1st of April 2021, unless the applicant or agent agrees an earlier date. We then have some new regulations. So there's been a reform of the use class order, which sees the revocation of certain use classes. So we're looking at classes A, B1 and D, is my understanding. And it's basically to make it easier for high street uses to change without the need for express planning permission, so a formal planning application to the council. And instead they've created a new broader category of commercial, business and service uses, and another use class for community and learning. So that's essentially to protect community facilities and infrastructure. But I would reassure members that uses such as hot food takeaways, betting shops, etc., still have full control of the local authority. The permitted development rights, there are some new rights being introduced. These are the ones that are relevant to members, will be the ones that are coming in on the 1st of September, and that is to allow an additional 2 stories to be erected on existing houses. So that's detached, semi-detached or in terraces, to create either new self-contained homes or additional living accommodation. It will be subject to a prior approval process, which will allow the local planning authority to consider under that the external appearance and impact on residential amenity, much in the normal way that we would a planning application. And finally, we have the new right for the demolition and rebuild of vacant, redundant, freestanding commercial and light industrial premises and residential blocks of flats. And at the same time, that the residential blocks of flats, you can incorporate the additional 2 stories into a proposal under that new mechanism. That is all that is really relevant for members at this moment, and I undertook to produce a comprehensive summary of these changes to the Eastern Planning Committee last time we met, and I will ensure that that's extended to members of this meeting too. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now I have one person who is speaking, that's Councillor Hyman. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, members. Yes, this is a matter which I raised at this committee, Western Planning Committee 4 weeks ago. Raised the matter of the Crondall case, which confirmed in UK law that Natural England's approach of evading assessment of biodiversity and endangered species mitigation is not lawful. And I assume officers have checked and confirmed this in the meantime, but I haven't heard it mentioned just now. It is, of course, every member's duty on behalf of our residents to ensure that this council acts within the constraints of the law. I will very briefly quote the first sentence of paragraph 77 of the Crondall judgment, which is that, and I quote, "It is clear that the approach of the CJEU, the Attorney General in the EU, to taking into account mitigation measures at the screening stage is directly contrary to the approach which had been taken in domestic law, UK law, in Hart and Smythe. That is the approach that is still being taken, and the advice of our officers and of Natural England, it still reflects the old position being taken in Hart and Smythe rather than the correct position of the Priebel-Overwind Sweetman judgment and the Crondall judgment in UK law. So this applies to applications 8.1 on the agenda and 8.3 at Hill Road and Kill Lane respectively. Will officers please just confirm that Crondall does apply to Waverley's decision making and to the decision making this evening? Thank you.
Sorry, apologies. Beth, you wish to answer that particular question?
Actually, Chairman, I was going to hand over to Lewis on this one.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Sorry about the delay there, Chairman. Just trying to unmute. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Hyman. You can be reassured that obviously we'll be dealing with each case as and when it comes in. We will be applying all of the relevant legislation and taking the guidance into consideration. And as you say, that will require us to take into account the Sweetman judgment, which we will do so.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can we move on? Item 7, applications for planning permission, which is the main element of our meeting tonight. We'll be using the polling feature as before within Zoom that has been set up so that votes on the following items can be taken by general assent or using the polling if a recorded vote is required. This is done by roll call. Anyway, move on. Applications under delegated powers. Are there any decisions taken by delegated powers that we have to note in these minutes, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No, there's nothing.
Apologies, I'm in quite a internet at the moment, but are there any decisions, Beth, which have to be taken? No?
No, Chairman.
No? No decisions?
No, Chairman, nothing.
Okay, sorry about that, but I've now taken off the video to try and help speed up. Right, we'll move on to main.
Lost you again.
Oh, have you? Oh dear.
Yes, sorry, we didn't hear any of that, David.
Right, okay, right, I've got rough internet, sorry, apologies. Right, the next is the first item is WA 20200029, land at the Heights, 5 Hill Road, Hazelmere. The proposal to erect 22 dwellings following demolition of former school buildings and dwelling. Chris Turner, present the case, please.
Good evening, members. I just wanted to check that everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you, Kim. Can you move on to the next slide? I think. Can you next slide? Yep. Thank you. The application site is located on the southern side of Hill Road. The site comprises an existing two-storey building, which is identified as a non-designated heritage asset, and that's located centrally in the site. The site comprises a mixture of single-storey buildings and outbuildings and areas of hard standing, which served as school play areas. There is one existing dwelling on the site, which is located on the western edge of the development area. To the northeast and west of the site, there are residential dwellings. To the south of the site is a Hazelmere War Memorial Recreation Ground. Next slide. This slide shows an aerial photograph of the site. From this photograph, members should be able to see how the development on the site is arranged in rows, with hard standing to the front and rear of the site and buildings located primarily in the central area of the site. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed site layout. The application proposes 22 units on the site, a net gain of 21 dwellings. These would comprise a mix of 1-bed flats, 2-bed flats, and 3-bedroom semi-detached properties. The flats would be located on the southern side and also in the place of the existing dwelling, which is shown on the right-hand side of this drawing and the top row of development at the top of the site plan. The 3-bed properties would be located to the front closest to Hill Road, which is at the bottom of the site plan, and centrally within the site. Next slide, please. Members will be aware that there have been 3 previous planning applications which have been submitted onto the site and which have collectively proposed 2 different housing schemes. WA 2018-1771 was an application for 25 units. On this scheme, 5 units were proposed towards the front of the scheme, adjacent to Hill Road, with accesses directly onto Hill Road, as shown on the bottom of the site plan. This application proposed to use the same access as the application we're considering at committee tonight. You can go to the next slide, please. This application was refused for 4 reasons. They've been paraphrased on this slide. However, in summary, they were due to character, the impact on character, the loss of the non-designated heritage asset, and the lack of legal agreements to secure affordable housing and infrastructure. Just to talk in a bit detail about the reason 1 relating to character, it was considered that due to the scale, pattern, and quantum of development, the proposal would have a negative impact on the character of the surrounding area and the street scene. The accumulation of large built form relative to the landscaping and the impact on preserving the well-wooded character of the area wasn't considered acceptable. This application is currently at appeal. Next slide, please. WA 2019-1026 and WA 2019-1135 were 2 separate planning applications which combined to create 1 scheme on the site for 24 dwellings. 1026 on the left proposed 20 units and featured an area of green space to the front. 2019 1135 on the right hand side proposed to provide 4 units to the front of the site in that green space area of 1026. Next slide, please. Application WA 2019-1135, which is the bottom one here, was considered harmful to the street scene as the impact was very similar to the front dwellings of 2018-1771. WA 2019-1026, whilst the application was for a reduction of units over the previous scheme, the application failed to integrate with the surrounding area, and the reasons for refusal stood to be similar as the previous applications, which included the impact on the character, the loss of the non-designated heritage asset, and the failure to enter into a legal agreement to secure affordable housing. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide is to show the current status of those previous applications. So they were all due to be considered to hearing back in April, and due to the COVID-19 outbreak, that has been delayed, and we do not currently have a new date for that hearing. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide shows the evolution of the previous schemes to the current scheme. The new scheme is considered to better relate to the surroundings than the previous scheme. There have been some subtle design changes. The site no longer proposes new accesses to the front adjoining Hill Road, other than the access to the rear of the site. It utilises an existing access that was on the, it utilised an existing access to serve parking for Unit 3. Plot 6 and 7, which are located towards the left-hand side of the site plan, feature design detailing, which on the middle row, features design detailing which provides a better relationship to Hill Road and also pedestrian access to Hill Road, which is shown on the bottom left-hand corner. This ensures the character of Hill Road is better maintained than the previous schemes. Only 2 units are now proposed adjacent to Hill Road. These were generally in line with number 7 Hill Road to the west. The increased garden areas serving Unit 6 and 7 allow for more significant tree planting on the site. This is contrary to the previous schemes. Can you go next slide, please? This slide seeks to demonstrate the quality of the tree planting proposed across the site. In the gardens of plot 6 and 7, it's now proposed that there would be trees of high landscape value as well as throughout the site. Next slide, please. This photograph shows the site from Hill Road looking south towards the existing school building. It's looking up through the second access to the site as it is existing. Next slide, please. The following 2 slides show the general context of the site and its existing state. The top 2 photographs show the existing single-storey elements of the school buildings. The bottom 2 photographs show the view of the site from the top playground area. In the photo on the bottom left, to the left of this photo is the Hazelmere War Memorial Recreation Ground. Outbuildings can be seen in the far end of this photograph. In the bottom right photograph, this shows the view of the school from the rear of the site looking north towards Hill Road. Next slide, please. This slide again shows the existing situation on the site. The two photographs on the top show the rear of the existing school building from the western edge of the site. The two photographs on the bottom show the existing building from within the site looking south. On the bottom left-hand photograph is the non-designated heritage asset. On the bottom right is an extension which comes off this building. Next slide, please. This slide shows the existing headmaster's house, which would be replaced with 4 one-bedroom flats. Next slide, please. This slide seeks to show the character of the surrounding area and set the site within its context. The photograph in the top left is looking west from the junction with Museum Hill. I'd like to draw members' attention to the fact that part of the road is dual carriageway with properties either side and large trees adjacent to the road. The photo in the top right is looking east and shows the existing entrance to the school, which would be the main entrance to the site. Here, the relationship to the existing properties on the northern side of Hill Road can be seen, and the existing landscaping and frontage to Hill Road on the southern, Here, the relationship to the existing properties on the northern side of Hill Road can be seen, and the existing landscaping and frontage to Hill Road on the southern side of the road. The photograph in the bottom left is looking east from the northeastern corner of the site. So that is the bottom left on the plan on the right-hand side. So at the pinch point. Members' attention is drawn to the single carriageway, which almost changes to a rural type feel with no road markings or pavements. It's at this point that the setback distances of dwellings become much larger, as again you can see on the photograph in the plan on the bottom right hand side, where Ashcombe, adjacent to the site, and those properties to the left have a much greater setback distance. The site is therefore considered part of a transitional area between the existing more built up part of Hill Road to the less formal road and carriageway. The drawing in the bottom right seeks to show how units 3 and 4 are largely in line with number 7 to the west, and the larger gardens of plot 6 and 7 allow a transition towards the setback distances of Ashcombe and those properties beyond. These larger gardens serving plot 6 and 7 allow for more significant tree planting, as previously highlighted, which is consistent with the road to the west. Next slide, please. This slide shows a section plan and seeks to show to members how dwellings would sit within the topography of the site. I must draw members' attention to the fact that this is showing the dotted outline seeks to show trees at full maturity. Next slide, please. The following slides show coloured street elevations. The top drawing shows how units 3 and 4 would be viewed from Hill Road. However, the hedge is shown as transparent on this drawing. The middle drawing shows how units 6 to 11 would appear from within the site, looking north. And the bottom drawing shows how the flats would appear from within the site, looking south. Can you go? Yeah, thank you. This slide shows a better close-up of plots 3 and 4, and is to give you an example of the quality of the architecture on the elevations. Go to the next slide, please. This slide shows plots 6 and 7. The drawing in the top right shows how the pedestrian access could look to serve onto Hill Road. On the northern elevation in the top left, members' attention is drawn to the design of this elevation. It's been slightly modified from the previous scheme with details which are made to look like the entrance of the property, giving it an impression that it fronts onto Hill Road. Next slide, please. These units would serve as flats to the rear of the site adjacent to Hazelmere Recreation Ground. The units are 3 stories in height with parking at the lowest level. To the rear are balconies at first floor level. Next slide, please. Units 16 and 17 are flats which stand alone in between the 2 other flatted buildings towards the rear of the site, so central within the site at the back. Like the other flats, they also feature balconies on the rear and parking at the lowest level. Next slide, please. This unit would replace the existing headmaster's house. It's 2-story and despite being an outlier to the rest of the development, are designed to be in keeping with the rest of that development. Next slide, please. The proposal would provide a net increase of 21 dwellings in a sustainable location within the settlement boundary and will therefore make a positive and meaningful contribution towards Waverley's objectively assessed housing need. It is acknowledged that the proposals would result in the loss of a non-designated heritage asset, but officers consider the benefits of the proposal would be a contribution to the housing supply and redevelopment of an existing brownfield site with high quality housing. In accordance with the NPPF, the benefits of the proposal need to be weighed against the loss of the non-designated heritage asset. The non-designated heritage asset is not statutorily listed, but it is a high quality house influenced by the arts and crafts movement and has a historic association with Hutchinson, whose family were responsible for the late 19th, earliest 20th century development of this part of Hazelmere. It therefore holds enough significance to be considered locally important. However, whilst officers recognise that the building is locally important, the building is not considered to be of such special historic interest that it would outweigh the benefits arising from the proposal. With regards to other matters, such as the impact on character, residential amenity, and parking and highway safety, the proposal is also acceptable. As such, sorry, next slide. The main matters of consideration are the planning history and the differences with the previous proposal, the impact on non-designated heritage asset, the loss of the heritage asset, design and impact on visual amenity, impact on residential amenity, highways access and parking, and the impact on trees. The application is recommended for approval subject to the completion of a legal agreement and in accordance with the conditions. If the legal agreement isn't signed within 6 months of the committee reaching a resolution to grant committee, the application would be refused. Thank you, Chair. And apologies, just to add, I do have a verbal update. Let me just find it. Apologies, Chair. So I have a verbal update following reconsideration of some comments received from Surrey Wildlife Trust that an additional informative is attached that requires that the applicant obtains a European Protected Species licence on receipt of planning permission and prior to any works that involve bats. and an additional consideration that states that work should proceed in line with the precautionary approach set out within the recommendation section of the submitted ecological report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. Right, we have a number of speakers on this particular item. And first of all, I will call Mr. Peter Hampson. You're there, Peter. You're objecting to this application. You have 4 minutes when you start speaking, Peter. Where's he gone?
Good evening, councillors. I speak on behalf of residents of the eastern part of Hill Road, which contains the site. My wife and I live immediately opposite the proposed entrance. Residents do want to see the site developed. We would encourage a smaller 15-unit scheme with a more interesting layout, which respects the existing building line and natural verdant frontage onto Hill Road. However, we believe this application, like its predecessors, represents considerable overdevelopment and harm to both the character and street scene of Hill Road and the appearance of the Hazelmere hillsides, with their local landscape designation recognised in Save Policy BE4 of the 2002 local plan. This is a difficult, steep site, 660 feet above sea level, north facing and on a hill with a 1:6 gradient, which regularly freezes over in winter. Our eastern part of Hill Road is a quiet cul-de-sac without pavements, curbs or turning points. The site towers over the houses on the opposite side of Hill Road, which are set very close to and 1 story beneath the road. This application would overdevelop this 0.9 hectare site by providing 22 dwellings at 24 dph. In contrast, excluding the site, the cul-de-sac has 18 dwellings in 2.2 hectares with an average density of 8 dph. It will deliver these units by erecting large regimented buildings in contrast to the pleasingly varied appearance of all the houses nearby. Units 3 and 4 facing Hill Road will be well in front of the long-established building line, overly dominant, out of keeping in the street scene, and require the destruction of the site's long-established, verdant and attractive frontage. The proposed development would fundamentally and adversely alter the character and appearance of the cul-de-sac and Hazelmere hillsides. Units 22 to 25 will significantly harm the amenity of High Green, Old Hazelmere Road, due to the bulk, high rear windows and a roofscape increase by the council from a 25-degree single to a 45-degree double pitch, despite the developer's willingness to build the lower roof. We are genuinely concerned about the proposal to create a new, steep, 2-way access road entering Hill Road at 90 degrees directly opposite number 8. This will create a real risk of both flooding and to life, as the only buffer between an out-of-control vehicle and those sleeping within the house would be a 19th century lath and plaster wall. No anti-skid surface will work if covered with ice or snow. The council ignored our request for a full risk assessment. Surrey Highways state their remit only involves the safety of road users. The safety of 8 Hill Road is not within their jurisdiction. The applicant's road safety audit also only addresses the safety of road users, but nonetheless, it describes the gradient of the proposed access as not ideal and recognises the potential for loss of control, junction overshooting and flooding. In contrast, the existing shallow angled one-way drive presents no such risks and has a traffic calming effect on vehicles leaving the site. It should be retained. To conclude, residents do want to see the site developed with a safe, less dense and more interesting scheme, which respects the building line and retains the verdant Hill Road frontage. This application represents overdevelopment, harm to the character of Hill Road and the Hazelmere hillsides, and the creation of a significant hazard for those of us who live beneath it. The scale, pattern and quantum of development, together with the loss of the non-designated heritage asset, form the principal reasons for the refusal of previous applications. The change from 25 and 24 units to 22 seems too small in planning impact to justify such a large change in attitude. We respectfully urge the committee to refuse permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Second speaker is Guy Lacosta, who is speaking in support of the scheme. Guy, are you there? You've got 4 minutes, Mr. Lacosta.
He's not, he's muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, chairman, thank you for letting me speak to you this evening on the matter. The planning application before you is a result of a detailed and helpful discussions with your officers, which has led to the design and layout of the scheme before you this evening. I earlier today emailed members to highlight the salient points of the application, which I do not propose repeating here. I would, however, like to highlight some concerns raised by local objectors and inform members of our response to such concerns. Some of those concerns led to changes to the layout which are included in the scheme you are considering this evening. Highway concerns raised by Mr. and Mrs. Hampson of number 8 Hill Road were in the main concerns that cars might skid and lose control when exiting the property, the proposed road, possibly colliding with their property, surface water runoff from the proposed access, possible concerns of flooding to their property, possible nuisance of car headlights of exiting cars from the proposed access road. I met in person with Mr. and Mrs. Hampson to understand their concerns and duly responded by adjusting the position and angle of the proposed access road with Hill Road so that any cars when exiting at that junction would be pointing away from number 8. Therefore, in the unlikely event that a car lost control, its trajectory would not collide with the Hampsons' property. We have also added an anti-skid surfacing to the proposed access, which would enhance traction in inclement weather conditions. It is also worth noting that the proposed combined access and egress junction with Hill Road is broadly in the same location as the existing access to the northwest corner of the site. The proposed access road surface will be permeable, designed to facilitate passive drainage of the road surface area and dissipate rainwater, therefore mitigating the requirement for traditional surface water road gullies. However, to address the Hampsons' concerns, we have over-provisioned and provided traditional road gullies in addition to the permeable surface as a catch-all approach. In effect, we will be providing 2 separate drainage systems to address their concerns. Due to the change of the alignment of the access road, no headlights from cars egressing from the access road onto Hill Road will shine onto the property of number 8 Hill Road. Furthermore, due to the gradient of the access road and coupled with the downward angle of car headlights, headlights will only ever shine on the road surface of Hill Road, not the property of number 8 Hill Road. I would also add that highway engineers at Surrey County Council requested a highway safety report, following which they were satisfied that with the findings and have no objections to the proposals from a road safety point of view. The occupiers of High Green to the southwest of the site raised concerns regarding their views of the roof pitch of 2225 being 45-degree plain tiled pitched roof, and the concern that the proposed would reduce their views to the south. Officers agreed that the proposed 45-degree pitch tile roof was appropriate for the design and the development before you. The non-designated heritage asset officers are satisfied that the benefits of the proposed schemes outweighs the loss of the non-designated heritage asset. Affordable housing, regrettably, due to the protracted planning process, the proposed scheme is not viable to support affordable housing provision. This has been verified by Council's independent viability consultant, and their findings are supported by your officers. Finally, to address concerns regarding fresh water capacity in the area, Thames Water have verified and confirmed that there is sufficient capacity within their network to supply the proposed scheme. I trust you will concur with officers' recommendations to grant permission, as the proposals before you comply with the relevant planning policies. Thank you for your time in considering this application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costa. I have 3 other speakers. I can see a couple of hands going up already, but I've got to do the other speakers first. Councillor Knowles, who's the ward councillor, you'll have 4 minutes, Councillor Knowles. And since you're a ward councillor, you'll also have the right to sum up at the end if you so wish. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In the time allowed, I'd like to talk about the effect this will have on some 6,000 residents in my ward. The report sweeps away all negative points and gives opinion as to why the application should be granted. Council, in my view, should deal with facts, not opinion. My first point is the traffic. Hill Road is accessed by single carriageway roads. There are no dual carriageways as referred to by the officer in his presentation. These are narrow, small lanes. Museum Hill is narrow with no footpath, and as many of you will have seen, requires a some 300-degree turn to access the end of Hill Road, which is the part under consideration this evening. Likewise, Old Hazelmere Road is narrow with no footpath and unsuitable for heavy vehicles. Officers may argue that there is access along Hill Road, but this road exits onto the A286 on the brow of a hill with very restricted sight lines, so much that the junction is controlled by a stop order on the exit from Hill Road. A stop rather than give way is very rare, as it requires a consent of the Secretary of State to issue such an order on a junction, and they're only permitted where there is a safety issue. No mention of this in your papers, colleagues. How strange, when safety is surely a prime concern, with probably hundreds of extra movements every day of the year on these country unclassified lanes. My second and most worrying point is about the water supply. This year, residents of my ward, supplied by Thames Water, were on low pressure or no supply over a period of some 4 days. In 2018, the same situation arose over a period of 2 to 3 weeks, with some people being off 36 hours at a time, and the hospital supplied by a water tanker. The fact is, my ward is supplied from a small reservoir on Blackdown Hill, with water pumped from a small pumping station of the Old Hazelmere Water Company in Sturt Road, enhanced by a restricted pump supply from the Guildford area, but alas, demand outstrips supply. On page 40 of your agenda, the report states Thames Water have confirmed there would be sufficient clean water capacity for the development. Members, that is not true. They have confirmed that they cannot guarantee supply to existing properties during dry weather. Indeed, they erected huge electronic signs on all approaches to Hazelmere asking people to use less water. And within the last few weeks, members from both Hazelmere and Cranley met on Zoom with Thames Water and planning officers who are fully aware of this. Thames Water confirmed the lack of capacity in the Guildford area, which includes Hazelmere, as it is a bubble cut off from the rest of the Thames Water network. They did speak of a solution by building a reservoir at Abingdon in Oxfordshire, and then pumping the water, probably via South East Water, to relieve the situation, but not until 2032. Those are the facts. The small throwaway paragraph is not accurate. As for conditions, we all know conditions and informatives are not worth the paper they're written on. Members, the facts are that the application will have a severe effect on the lives and amenity of some 6,000 residents, and I asked you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Knowles. I also have another ward councillor wishing to speak, and that's Councillor Mulliner. Councillor Mulliner, will you give your 4 minutes? And again, Mark, since you're ward councillor, you have the right to something at the end if you so wish.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me begin by thanking Chris Turner for his detailed presentation. I'd like to start by saying that I have every sympathy with the points made by Mr. Hampson. And having experienced some truly astonishing rainfall in Hazelmere over the years, when the high street itself turned into a river, the rate of water that could come off the site, which is, as he said, very steep, could easily overwhelm the anti-flood measures that are proposed. While I appreciate Mr. Lacosta's good wishes in this matter, I think that the existing access has much to recommend it and should be retained. And likewise, I entirely agree that the frontage onto Hill Road is very attractive, and that too should be retained. However, the main points I want to make are that this is an application which is one of a set of 3, as we've heard. The first 2 were for 25 and then 24 units. The second one was in fact divided into 2 separate applications, one for 20 and one for 4. All of them do indeed represent at least a doubling, if not almost a trebling, of the local housing density. And the primary reason for refusal of the first two proposals, namely the scale and pattern of the proposed built form, is, I submit, equally relevant to this proposal before you tonight. I listened with interest to the presentation, and I acknowledge the efforts that have been made to make this application more attractive and more in keeping with the surroundings. But the fact of the matter is, as the case officer confirmed to me this afternoon, there has been no change whatsoever to the scale and pattern of the built form of the rear and middle rows of dwellings. It is relevant that the second proposal, which was for 24 dwellings, was split into two, and 2019-1026 was in respect of 20 units in the rear and middle rows of the dwellings. And this, of course, is precisely the same 20 dwellings that constitute the rear and middle rows of this application. And the primary reason given for refusing that application dealing solely with the 20 dwellings in the rear and middle, which was dated 17th of October 2019, was as follows. The proposal having regard to the scale, pattern and design of the development would fail to preserve the character of the surrounding area and would have a harmful impact on the street scene of the adjacent Hill Road. As this application includes precisely the same 20 dwellings, I submit that this primary reason for refusal in the previous application applies with equal force to this application. I also put forward that consistency in planning decisions is important and should not lightly be set aside. However, consistency is of particular importance in this matter and leads to my third point. As we have heard, the refusals of the first three applications have led to appeals which are still outstanding. The case officer confirmed to me today that the applicant has not undertaken to withdraw those appeals if his application is granted tonight. I believe that granting permission for 22 dwellings will seriously undermine the council's case for its refusal of 24 and 25 dwellings. If this application is granted, it is difficult to see why an inspector should feel obliged to distinguish between an acceptable 22 units and an unacceptable 24 or 25 units. In short, granting permission for 22 units is likely to lead permission being granted for 24 or 25 units. The choice in this matter is fundamentally between the large, dense and regimented development that the developer wants and a smaller, more sympathetic development which local residents would support. The three outstanding appeals provide a planning inspector with the opportunity to decide whether the council's objections to the large, dense and regimented development should be upheld or rejected. I believe that this opportunity to let an inspector decide should be preserved, and that this application should be refused on the same grounds as the previous ones, so that the council is seen to maintain a coherent and consistent position of objection to a large, dense and regimented development of this site. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hyman. Right, the third councillor, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I do appreciate the efforts made by Mr Lacoste to make this development acceptable and also the concerns of residents as set out by Mr Hampson and Councillor Knowles and Councillor Mulliner. And as I'm not a ward member and I'm not on the committee, I'm a substitute, I merely doing my duty to residents in respect to the legal constraints and will continue to do so until the constraints are accepted by the council fully and implemented. As Councillor Knowles said, we need to deal with facts, not opinion, and it's a fact that the council has accepted that there is an in-combination impact development in Hazelmere which requires mitigation, and the Sweetman and Crondall cases require that an AA of the mitigation that is required is provided, otherwise the application must be refused. This is not the fault of the applicant, but it is something of which you should be advised properly. This application could be granted lawfully through the Article 6.4 route of imperative reasons of overriding public interest, and it would be up to the committee, were such an application submitted for 15 homes or whatever, it would be up to the committee as to whether or not they considered that to be an imperative reason of overriding public interest to provide that number of houses in this location. The Sturt Farm application that nearby has required mitigation. It confirms that the in-combination effect must be considered, and following our solicitors' confirmation that the Sweetman People over Wind and Crondall case is made clear. The law requires we have to have an appropriate assessment, and there isn't one. So I'll allow others to speak with respect to the impact on the surrounding area, overdevelopment, the Herbert Hutchinson non-designated heritage asset, and the lack of affordable housing. But Chairman, this application does not have an appropriate assessment, and members should be fully aware that that requires that they refuse consent, and obviously as the strongest reason for refusal, that should be included in the reasons in order to ensure that the planning inspectorate could not overturn their decision if that's the way they feel. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hyman. Right, I have a number of speakers, starting with Councillor Merrilees.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say that once again, it's the affordable housing that has to go, and it's the affordable housing that we need in this county, in this borough. I'm so sick of this. There's plenty of development, but not enough for the people who sustain our communities and who desperately need housing. So for me, just on that point alone, I'm just tired of not seeing affordable housing for people who really need it. So I shall not be voting this forward on that main reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt.
Mr. Chairman, can I just interrupt to say that
Yes.
we've lost Councillor Adams temporarily?
Yeah. Well, can we just wait a minute? Just lost him, have we?
We've, yes, just a moment or so ago, and we obviously are still quorate, but if he does
Yes.
rejoin, he wouldn't be able to vote on this item.
We'll just wait a couple of minutes, see if we can reconnect. Can we ring him by chance?
Yeah, we can try and get in touch with him.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I really do think we should press on. It's quite simple. He doesn't vote on this one, but he can vote on everything else.
He can indeed, Councillor Corbyn. Well, I don't know. I'll just give him a minute and then we'll go on.
Chairman, can I come back on Councillor Merrilees' point about affordable housing?
Yes, why not?
Whilst that's going on, just to explain that the applicant has submitted a viability assessment for the affordable housing, and that was reviewed by an independent consultant on behalf of Waverley Borough Council, who considered that the provision of affordable housing on this particular application wasn't viable. I would just want to steer members away from refusing the application on these grounds, given that this is the accepted procedure for reviewing affordable housing, and I can appreciate the frustration in terms of how the interpretation of that through the planning system. However, correct procedure has been followed here by the applicant and by ourselves in having that reviewed, and the conclusion was that it wouldn't be viable to provide affordable housing on this site. Now, that's not to say that on the other units, on the other applications where there are more units proposed, we are still in the process, along with the applicant, in discussing that particular point. But at the moment in time, was the applicant on those 25 and 24 unit schemes is saying that it's not viable to provide affordable housing, our consultant has come back and said that he considers it would be viable. And at this moment in time, unless anything else comes up going into the hearings for those two applications, that is the position that we are currently taking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. I understand what you're saying, and in fact I would doubt whether that could be used as a use should we decide to refuse this application. Is Councillor Adams here or not? Fiona?
Not, Chairman. And
okay, we'll press on then.
Phone just now.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I did want to also raise the issue of affordable housing. I will say it quickly. Looking through the pack, at those previous applications, there were 4 units of affordable housing included in, I think, 1771. and also 4 units in 1026/1135, of which the application was only 7 months ago, I think. You know, there obviously aren't any in this, although the plans don't look all that different. The volume's slightly different, but kind of fairly minimal, really. So, you know, I think we are right to question why there isn't any affordable housing included, especially because there were in previous applications. So in terms of the independent viability assessment that has concurred that it's not viable, can we as councillors see that and read that? And when that comes up in these planning applications, can we see a summary or the actual independent reports ourselves? Because it just seems very strange to me that 3 applications that went through, you know, within a year ago did contain them, and now they're not. And you know, it is an important issue. And you know, you say that the independent consultant has concurred, but I think it would be really helpful, and also for our knowledge building, if we could read those reports ourselves.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I can assure you, Councillor, that the affordable housing was an issue discussed at the executive briefing this afternoon. So it's an issue we are dealing with. But I take your point. On this. But on Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions and one observation. The first question is public transport available at this site? If not, how can we be assured that there's suitable and sufficient parking spaces? The second question is, at the Hammerhead, can a fire engine and a utility vehicle turn around? The third question is, I just find it completely absurd that the roofs are so high. If we're trying to conserve materials, why are the roofs so high? The fourth question is, will all the building take place on site? This is a very congested location. All the construction, all the materials, and all the people building these properties should be parked on site without constricting access for the neighbours. And the final point, as Councillor Hunt mentioned, until I cannot accept that there's no affordable homes unless I'm given evidence. The public deserves to know that no affordable houses can be justified on this site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Councillor Martin. I mean, I'll come back to your questions in a minute, okay?
As I'm not really a resident of Haslemere, I went up to look at this site yesterday using Museum Hill. My God, it was hairy, especially stopping at the top. I was glad I had good handbrakes, but everywhere seems to be steep around there, and I'm really worried about the access. Also, I don't know why we can support the destruction of a non-designated heritage asset. I looked at it and I feel a small sympathetic scheme could be proposed, utilising the interesting architectural features of that house, which is already there. So I'm sorry, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rubini, or Councillor Keane, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is Councillor Rubini. I don't want to repeat what others have said. I feel very strongly on several issues on this site and application. First of all, the water situation. Councillor Knowles is absolutely right, but in fact we at Haslemere are suffering in the height of summer water loss, and the Thames themselves said at this time they could not provide enough water for us. It is an underground reservoir, it's not fed directly by rain, that makes no difference. It has to be pumped via pipes from other parts of Surrey, mainly from the north, i.e. Guildford and that area. There is no short-term solution. I cannot understand how we keep building houses. There is another application at Sturt Farm to come in yet. We will be using more and more water, and yet there is no acceptable supply over and above what we already have. So I really am very concerned that Thames Water keeps saying they can supply this water when in fact they can't. The second one, of course, is the affordable situation. Haslemere Town now seems to be somewhere that they will not build affordable housing. Yes, I have had a look at the viability study. I am assured it is an independent study. It does agree with the applicant that there is no manoeuvre for the amount of housing that would include affordable housing. And as Councillor Hunt correctly said, on previous applications, they did have affordable housing within it. I myself would wish that we have affordable housing in the town centre. We cannot exclude people just simply because the developers will not find the money or the profit to actually make affordable housing viable. I feel very strongly about this matter. We need affordable and social housing in the centre of the town, and it would seem to me that developers are not accommodating both the local government and indeed the main government, who also put targets up for about 30% affordable housing. This goes against the plans. We need affordable housing on this site. And thirdly, of course, is the road and the architecture of the buildings. I honestly feel that this development does not coincide with that lovely building that is there at present. And indeed, the roads there cannot sustain the traffic of people that are not aware of the area that will be coming in. And I am sure that there will be problems with both Hill Road and Museum Hill. So that's what I've said. As I say, I try not to repeat what others have said, but I would support Councillor Knowles-Mulliner and all the others that have spoken previously. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Deer.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. This is a site where everybody agrees something needs to happen. Residents and council members and obviously the site owner. Against the background of previous refusals, I suggested a members, officers, applicant meeting to try and forge a way ahead, but I was told that's not the way it's done. That seems to me a shame because, as Councillor Mulliner has eloquently said, the scheme before us tonight differs very little in the scale, bulk and appearance from several of those that have been refused before. There must be the need to be consistent. The southernmost building at the top of the hill, adjacent to the War Memorial Recreation Ground, seems to be oppressive and dominant of the hillside. And the new access and egress point seems still to have design failings, never mind what Surrey County Council say, because of the topography of the site that's already been discussed. I appreciate the measures the applicant has suggested, but remain sceptical that it works. It's not a planning matter as such, but I deplore the action taken by the site owner in planting fast-growing bamboo on the southern boundary of the site soon after completion of its purchase a few years ago. The only motive one can ascribe to this is the wish to block the view from the public recreation ground as quickly as possible in order to head off objections to the size of the building. As I say, not a planning matter, I think, but it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. I also think it's absurd that the roof line of units 22 to 25, I believe they are, the existing headmaster's house site, is required by the design officer to be higher, ladies and gentlemen, than the level agreed between the applicant and the immediate neighbour. This makes this particular building, this particular component, even more intrusive, bulky and overbearing than either party wishes it to be. And they're the very grounds on which previous schemes have been refused. I mean, I just don't get it. As I've said before, there is a scheme to be done here. I think everybody wants that. But once again, this is not it. This application, as before, is contrary to retained policies D1, D4 and BE4 of the old local plan, as well as the Hazelmere design statement. And I would also like specific mention made of the roof line of plots 22 to 25 being a reason for refusal. As a ward member and property professional, I would like to engage with the applicant, with colleagues, to work towards a scheme that might finally be acceptable. But I will be voting against this application, and I ask my fellow members to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Deer. I'll take Councillor Shoot first because he hasn't spoken before. Councillor Shoot.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a few comments, because what I've got to say really has already been said. We've had 3 previous applications that have been refused. They go to appeal. This is a brownfield site. We are looking for a development there. Sadly, we didn't have a site visit here. What is the difference between this and the previous 3 appeals applications? Really, only the fact that there are no affordable homes on it. Very little has changed. Look at the vast number of objections on site on the Waverley website. It's quite something. The density, when we look at this in comparison with the rest of the Haslemere Hillside area, is out of order. The 2 top terraces are regimented. They're out of keeping with the whole Haslemere Hillside. Councillor Dears just mentioned plot 22 to 25, where the developer, in fact, had agreed with the neighbour to reduce the pitch of the roof to 25 degrees from 45 and to clad it with slate tiles. Why has our design office gone the other way and said this is not necessary? Sorry, I think that is wrong. The proposed development fails to maintain the character of the area, the Haslemere Hillside, and that's contrary to policy B4 of the local plan of 2002. I look at a number of other comments that are here. The architecture fits in with the surrounding area and the density is similar to the pattern of development on Hill Road. No, it isn't. Sorry, that is an error, I do believe. One other comment, the SMAR, again, is what we should be sticking to, but there is a conflict with the SMAR as the officers report in their page 22, and the mix of market housing is not as per the SMAR. That I find very unfortunate. We've mentioned water, that's something else. The non-designated heritage asset is worth just mentioning. It's in a dreadful state now. The developers really have not maintained that building in any way, shape or form. It's been vandalized. I wonder how often the police are being called to deal with it. Haven't heard very much about that. But to me, this development is like the previous 3 that are up for appeal, and I cannot accept it. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shood. Councillor Hunt, you want to come back?
Thank you. It's just a very quick question. It wasn't really answered previously. Is it possible in future for the independent viability reports to be added to the papers when applicable?
I would have no problem with that. Beth? Or Lewis, does that have a problem?
Thank you, Chairman. It would very much depend on how commercially sensitive that information was. However, we would be able certainly to append an executive summary and on a case-by-case basis look at whether or not we could append the financial viability assessment. It is possible that we could circulate it amongst members confidentially as part of the agenda papers, but it would need to be kept in the strictest of confidence if it was deemed to be commercially sensitive. Thank you, Chairman.
No, of course. And you know, this issue isn't going to go away. So I just think that any information that we can get to educate ourselves as to, you know, as to these reports is going to be helpful to make us more effective. So
fair point, Councillor, fair point. Right, Councillor Beanie.
Thank you. It's Councillor Keane. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. I agree with all of the other speakers about the fact that this development is out of keeping with Hill Road. For all of those that live in Hazelmere and know this area very well, it really is going to be a blot on the landscape of that area. I'm also concerned about the flooding issues that was raised by a resident. And again, as Councillor Mulliner said, we all know that when we have heavy rain, it pours down Museum Hill, and in icy weather, you can't get up the wretched road anyway. Affordable housing, you know, again, we're not going to have affordable housing. And as others have said, it goes on time and time again. So for these reasons, I will not be supporting this application. Thank you, Chairman.
And you now got Councillor Neil, and then I'll see Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point, apart from what's already been said, I really can't see the logic in the developer progressing this application at the moment when he's got, you know, 2 or 3 others currently in consideration with the inspectorate. It'd be much better to wait and see what the outcome of those were, you know, as a matter of sensible principle to me. So I'm not supporting the application either. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Chris, Councillor Edmonds had some questions. Could you answer them, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will. I'll go through and I'll try and answer as many questions as I can that I wrote down. Conscious of the fact it's a long agenda, yeah. I'll try to keep them brief. So, in relation to, I'll start with the high roof at blocks 21 to 25. Now, the scheme is in an arts and crafts style, which is why the roofs are so big on these properties. Now, something to remember is that on the previous schemes, we have adjusted that roof to make it the steeper 45-degree pitch. And those units on those previous schemes are to be affordable housing, and that is what we are arguing for on behalf of the council. Now, having the roofs that match the rest of the development obviously keeps that as tenure neutral, so you can look at the development and you would not necessarily know which are the affordable housing units on the site. So in terms of keeping that consistency, we maintain that roof form despite the fact that these are market housing on this scheme, because we don't have the outcome of the previous 2 proposals. So that is why we've stuck with this higher roof form, which we consider to be acceptable. Working my way through to Councillor Hunt, you raised about the viability assessments. Now, there should have been a copy circulated of that to members. It would have been a few weeks ago now, but regardless of that, the applicant did on request submit an executive summary of his affordable housing viability study, and I uploaded that to the website along with the council's independent viability third-party assessment of that study, which is also on the website. In relation to the points that Councillor Edmonds makes, we've already talked about high roofs. In the comments from Surrey County Council Highways, they have confirmed that the road is large enough and that the gradient is not unacceptable, so that fire engines and refuge vehicles can't get onto the proposed development. It is considered to be in a highly sustainable location. I can't tell you off the top of my head precisely where the access to public transport is, but it should be considered that you can walk from the site into the centre of Hazelmere relatively quickly, given its proximity to the town centre. In terms of parking, there is an over provision of parking on the site, and that is again confirmed by Surrey County Council Highways. I believe it's approximately 50, I think it's 50 something parking, but it is in the report, and I can double check that. Councillor, apologies, I can't remember the councillor's last name, but Michaela, you raised the steepness of the site and the steepness of the surrounding roads. Again, going off the advice from Surrey County Council Highways, they don't raise issue with the gradient of the site, and on that basis, I think we would be on. We wouldn't be on a strong position to then refuse the application on that particular point. You also raised the fact the loss of the non-designated heritage asset. As in the report, when looking at the development of the whole as a whole, officers, we believe that the benefits of the proposal do actually outweigh the loss, do outweigh the significance of that non-designated heritage asset. Councillor Abini, you raised water. Again, I'd like to add that there is a statement on the website that the applicant submitted from Thames Water, which confirms there is enough capacity in the local area. I know that in recent weeks that that residents may have received a letter about a potential drop in capacity. Having spoken to Thames Water, my understanding is that that was sent around the time of the fire in Thursday, which was back in May. But that's the information that I've been given. You also raised affordable housing. Once again, I think I've already covered that point. And the road steepness, again, going back to the point I made about it being acceptable from a county highways perspective. Councillor Deere, you raised you wanted an answer about the plot, the flats at plots 21 to 25. Again, I think I've gone over why that roof change.
I didn't want an answer. I was expressing an opinion that it was bulky and unnecessarily oppressive to the adjoining properties for no necessary reason I could determine. The distinguishing of that from affordable housing seems to me utterly unnecessary. This is simply a matter of design. I'm not asking a question. I was making a statement.
Okay, well, apologies for interpreting that as a question. Councillor Isherwood, you mentioned about not being in accordance with the SHMA. Obviously, it's not in a absolutely 100% in accordance with it, but we consider it provides an appropriate provision of those units which are in highest demand, which are 2 and 3 bedroom properties. And yeah, I think, oh, sorry, Councillor Keane, you raised about flooding coming off the site. Just to mention the fact that as the applicant said in their speech, there is provision of additional drainage facilities, but also to confirm that there was no objection from the flooding authority which looks at drainage on the particular site. And yeah, I think that was all the questions that I was asked. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Should you put your hand up? Have you got a question?
Sorry, Chairman, not a question, but if I may come back with just one comment that's in the report. The proposed scheme would introduce significant amount of build form onto the site of a significant scale, which has a greater height than the existing school building. Hence my comment earlier on that the density and regimentation was heavy, and I can't really see any change from this application to the previous 3. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, we now move to the recommendation, which I shall read out. The recommendation is that subject to completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure maintenance of the amenity areas, hard and soft landscaping, SUDs in perpetuity, estate roads and footpaths, and granted conditions 1 to 29, and 1 to 12, permission be granted. and recommendation B will take the same time. In the event that the 106 agreement required under the recommendation A is not entered into within the 6 months of the date of the resolution by the Western Planning Committee, that permission is refused. We can I vote Kimberly, I think, because of the voting. Could you vote in both cases, please? Hmm. Is I see your hand? Okay, well, recommendation A is obviously lost, but well, recommendation B becomes superfluous, doesn't it? Really, in that case. So we need another resolution. Anyone wish to propose a?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go on then.
May I suggest that the application is refused as contrary to retained policies D1, D4 and BE4 of the 2002 local plan, as well as the design statement. And I would also like specific mention made of the roof line as plots 22 to 25 as being a reason for refusal.
Okay, Councillor Coburn, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I was just going to put the alternative suggestion and proposal, and quite happy to second that one. I've always thought we proposed and seconded it and then looked at the reasons, so I'll have to quickly go back over the reasons, but quite happy to second.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, officers, are you happy with that recommendation? As it were in words? Otherwise, we'll put it to the vote. You have to put it to the vote. Anybody else? No, okay. Can we put that to the vote, please?
And I would say, Mr. Chairman, if the planning officers have got anything else they think is relevant or I have got technically wrong, I would ask for their advice. But the essence of what's being proposed, I hope, is clear.
Chris Finch?
I think we should look at whether you feel it's overcome the reasons for refusal that were on the previous scheme, and because I think at the moment there's some discussion about there's some variation between what you're saying and the previous reasons for refusal. So I do wonder whether there's any merit in Chris Turner, if you were able to read the if the chairman finds that acceptable, read the previous reasons for refusal, and then you'd be able to see whether that they've been overcome or not, because that might be a more appropriate way to decide what reasons we attach, because then there'd be some consistency in terms of what you're looking at. Thank you, Chairman.
You're the experts, but I would like mention of the roof line of the separate dwelling, please, the separate little block.
I think we realise that, Councillor Dear. Right, Chris, do you want anything else before we watch the vote?
Sorry, Councillor Dear, I know that you want reference to the roof line of 21 and 25. Can I just make absolutely clear that in the report, the impact on High Green to the north has been considered in detail in relation to that increase in height.
I know it was mentioned in the report. I disagree with it.
Right. Okay. If I read out,
I think by listening to what other members have said, that was a commonly held thought as well.
Okay. If I read out the previous reasons for refusal then and amend it to include reference to the units 21 to 25.
Thank you.
Okay. The proposal having regard to scale, pattern, design of development would fail to preserve the character of the surrounding area and would have a harmful impact on the street scene of the adjacent hill road. Furthermore, the accumulation of large built form on the site relative to the extent of the proposed landscaping would fail to maintain the existing wooded character of the site and of the Hazelmere hillsides. The proposal would therefore conflict with policies D1, D4 and B4 of the Local Plan 2002, policy TD1 of the Local Plan Part 1, Strategic Policies and Site 2018 in the Hazelmere Design Statement. And just to be clear, it is on character in reference to that ridge line you're talking about.
Okay.
And
Is that Chris
then-
French you want to speak? Chris French?
Chris, sorry, can you clarify the other reasons that were attached so that we're clear on that?
Yeah, apologies. Yeah. And the second reason for refusal, the proposal would result in the loss of a non-designated heritage asset, which would not be considered acceptable when weighed against the significance of the heritage asset in accordance with policy 197 of the MPPF. The proposal would not therefore accord with policy HA1 of the Local Plan, Part 1, 2018, paragraphs 192 and 197 of the MPPF 2019. And thirdly, the application has failed to enter into an appropriate legal agreement to secure the maintenance of the amenity areas, hard and soft landscaping, SUDs in perpetuity, estate roads and footpaths. Now that last reason covers off a number of policies, so I think we would have to take that away with us.
Okay. Okay, we'll get to vote on that one. Yes. Kimberly, can I put the voting thing up? Oh, yeah.
Four.
Thank you, Councillor Keane.
Okay.
So
I know that's fairly clear cut. Okay, in the decision, the application stands as refused for the reasons given. Can we move on, please? Right. Second item of the night is WA 20200259, land coordinates, oh gosh, 492599, 134278, track known as Muddy Lane, Prestwick Lane, Greyswood. The proposal is a change of use of land from agriculture to provide a base for outdoor education and recreation, together with the erection of 4 buildings, 5 movable structures, associated parking and ancillary works, as amended and amplified by plans and information received on the 29th of May 2020, 8th of June 2020, 17th of June and 19th of June. Philippa, to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Can you guys see? Yeah. So I'm just trying to share the full screen a second. Great, there we go. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members, and thank you for your patience. I will try to be concise with this item. I would first draw members' attention to the update sheet, which has corrected a typo on page 13 of the officer report and sets out a late consultation response from the British Horse Society and 4 late representations received from neighbouring occupiers. This has not changed the officer recommendation as set out in the agenda report. And firstly, I'll introduce you to the site. So the application site is located to the east of Prestwick Lane at the end of and accessed by an unmade lane referred to locally as Muddy Lane, which is also public bridleway BW50. Muddy Lane serves 2 residences, a water treatment works, the Van Walt business, the forest school and an equestrian property. The application site comprises a large field in lawful agricultural use bound by a hedgerow with the public right-of-way transecting the site from north west to south east. And here's an aerial photograph, and the the lane runs approximately along here through these trees to the entrance of the site here, and this is the bridleway that runs across the site. And the main proposal area is located here.
It's not on the screen.
You can't see it.
Still got the first one, it's not moving on.
Okay, let me just stop sharing it and we'll try again. Apologies.
Try taking it off edit, Philly. Enable editing.
Mm-hmm. This happened previously, so I might need Fiona or Kim to share it for me. And in order to be quick, would that be possible, Kim or Fiona, for you to share it?
You have circulated each slide, haven't you, anyway? I believe.
Kimberly, yeah, there we go, thank you. And I'll just say next slide when appropriate, if that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
If we could go to the aerial photograph, please. So thank you. Oh. Got to love technology. If we could go back to the aerial photograph, that would be great. Great, thank you. So I'm unable to point to the screen now, but you'll be able to see the lane follows the trees through the site to the entrance of the site, and then you can see where there is a little bit of hedging through the site. That's where the bridleway runs through the wider site. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the proposal in detail. So the application proposes the change of use of 2 acres of a 12-acre site from an existing agricultural use to provide a base for outdoor education and recreation. Many activities would take place off-site, such as walking, hiking, kayaking and cycling. On-site activities would include outdoor learning and outdoor skills. Camping solely in association with these activities would be available if desired by visitors. The proposal includes 4 buildings, a toilet block and shower block, a communal shelter and a storage block where any equipment could be stored securely. The application also proposes 5 movable structures which could be used for overnight shelters. Visitors are also able to utilise their own tents if they so wish. The application provides parking for 12 vehicles, and ancillary works as part of the proposal include an underground water treatment unit for the toilets and showers, waste storage and a water borehole. The proposal would be restricted to 40 visitors at any one time via condition, and the remainder of the site would be used for grazing in line with the existing agricultural use. Next slide, please. So the area that we're considering is within the red line, which does continue down the length of the lane, but just so we could zoom in a bit, I haven't included that bit. Here we can see just outside the entrance to the site, there is space provided for parking. There is also parking provided within the site. There's no hard standing proposed as part of that. And then within the line in the field, you can see the approximate location of the movable overnight shelters, the toilet block and shower block and the communal shelter. And yeah, I think that's all of the key points to point out on the block plan, and I'll go into the structures in more detail in a moment. Next slide, please. So I provided a number of photographs of the site. So photograph A is taken from the northwest, looking from Muddy Lane towards the entrance of the site, and you can see that there is a minibus parked in the parking, in what would be part of the parking area. Next slide, please. Photograph B is from the same location but a bit closer and shows the existing gate and access to the site. Next slide, please. Photograph C is taken from the northeast, and this is the existing gate to Forest School, which is part of Grayswood Nursery School. Yeah, next slide, please. The photograph D is taken from the site entrance looking down Muddy Lane, where we can see the same van that I pointed out earlier. Next slide, please. So this is a similar angle to the previous photograph, but taken further back, where you can see the existing entrance to the field, and that's where the proposed parking within the site would be located. Next slide, please. This photograph is taken from the southwest, looking towards the area that would house the well, the area that we're considering for the change of use, which would house the structures in an area, it's sort of at a lower land level to the entrance. Thank you. And this is a close-up view of that area, showing some of the sort of scrubland that is there. Next slide, please. And this is again showing us the similar area where the change of use would be proposed, but in a bit closer up. Thank you. Next slide. This photograph is taken from the west, looking across the field. So similar view to the previous, but further back from within the field. Next slide, please. This shows the, you may remember from the aerial photograph, where the bridleway runs across the field, where it transects it. There's a bench and a little bit of fencing and some hedging. Next one, please. This is looking from where the change of use would be up towards the entrance of the site. Next one. Please. Thank you. And this is showing in sort of slightly clearer where the bridleway runs across the site, where it transects the site. Thank you. Next slide. So here we see the proposed elevations of the toilet and shower block. This block would be 8.4 metres by 3 metres with an eaves height of 2.2 metres and a ridge of 2.6. Next slide, please. And this just shows the floor plan and the roof plan of that block. Next slide, please. And this is the storage block, as I said, would be used for secure storage of equipment and anything needed storing on site. This would be 3 metres by 3 metres, again with an eaves height of 2.2 metres. Next one, please. This slide shows the overnight shelters. So there's 5 of these shelters proposed as part of the proposal, and they would be movable. These are 3 metres by 3.6 metres, again with a 2.2 metre eaves height. The next one, please. And this is the communal shelter, which is open-sided on one side. And that that would be 4.8 metres by 3 metres with an eaves height of 2.2 again. Next slide, please. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So moving on to the matters of consideration. So this slide contains what officers consider to be the main considerations in relation to the proposal, and I'll run through each of these in turn. So with regard to impact on the Greenbelt, paragraph 146 of the NPPF sets out that certain forms of development are not inappropriate in the Greenbelt as they preserve its openness and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. This includes clause E, which is that material changes of use of land, such as changes of use for outdoor sport or recreation, are not inappropriate in the Greenbelt. The application proposes the change of use of the land within the red line from an existing agricultural use to provide a base for outdoor education and recreation activities as set out in the officer report. It is noted that a number of activities would take place off-site, but not all, and this would form the base for those activities. Paragraph 145 of the NPPF sets out that new buildings should be regarded as inappropriate in the Greenbelt unless, in this case, they are for the provision of appropriate facilities in connection with the existing use of land or a change of use of land for outdoor sport and outdoor recreation, as long as the facilities preserve the openness of the Greenbelt and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. Officers note the comments received regarding the proposed buildings failing to preserve openness. However, the buildings would be modest in scale and would provide appropriate facilities in connection with the change of use of the land for outdoor and recreation, which is an appropriate use as set out in the NPPF. Neither the change of use nor the proposed buildings would conflict with the purposes of the Greenbelt as set out in the NPPF, nor would they materially fail to preserve openness, as they are buildings to be used in association with the provision of appropriate facilities. With regards to impact on the AONB, AGLB design and impact on visual amenity, the Surrey Hills AONB management plan for 2020 to 2025 gives a greater emphasis on fostering the public's recreation, health and well-being benefits of getting out into the Surrey Hills AONB. Members will have noted from the officer report that the application has received the support of the Surrey Hills AONB advisor, who has also noted that support is rarely expressed to developments. It is considered that the applicant has demonstrated an appreciation of the AONB in formulating the proposals in a sensitive way so as not to spoil its inherent qualities. The proposal was considered to respect the landscape character of the AONB and AGLB in that regard. With regard to access, parking and rights of way, the site is accessed via Muddy Lane, which is a public bridleway. The existing access is already shared and utilised by 2 residences, a water treatment works, the Van Walt business, the Forest School and an equestrian property. The County Highway Authority and Surrey County Council Right of Way Officer have been consulted on the application and raised no objection, subject to the applicant ensuring that public access to the bridleway is maintained at all times. It would be an offence to block or obstruct the public right of way, and this applies to all existing users of the public bridleway, not just the applicant. Sufficient parking for the proposal's needs would be provided on the existing lay-by and within the entrance to the field. No hard standing is proposed. Vehicle numbers would be restricted by condition, as would visitor numbers. It should be noted that whilst the site is not currently in active agricultural use, that it is its current lawful use, and the applicant would be able to undertake agricultural operations at the site without further authorisation, including the operation of vehicles. With regard to the impact on residential amenity, the application site is well separated from neighbouring occupiers. As such, no harm is identified with regard to overlooking, loss of privacy, loss of outlook, loss of light, nor is the proposal likely to appear overbearing. With regard to noise and disturbance, given the small-scale nature of the proposal, no concern is raised regarding noise and disturbance. However, a condition is recommended prohibiting amplified sound. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Philippa. Thank you for that presentation. We have 2 speakers. And the first speaker is Steve Wagstaff, who wishes to speak in objection to the proposal. Steve.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, yes.
Great, okay. I'll begin. Thank you. My name is Steve Wagstaff, and I'm speaking as just one of very many concerned residents of the village of Grayswood. There have been multiple objections on a wide variety of grounds, and a petition of nearly 130 households was submitted. That's over 90% of Grayswood. Residents have serious, valid concerns about the development that they don't believe are resolved. This site is Greenbelt, totally undeveloped and very open. There are no buildings, no hard standings, and it forms a distinct visual break into countryside. It's essential to the purposes of the Greenbelt around the village to protect the sprawl of development and maintain openness. I want to focus on the key planning issues. 1, is the use really appropriate in the Greenbelt? The NPPF states construction of new buildings is inappropriate in the Greenbelt. Exceptions are B, the provision of appropriate facilities for outdoor sport, outdoor recreation, as long as the facilities preserve the openness of the Greenbelt. The intention of this is that appropriate facilities should be ancillary to the main outdoor recreation use. For example, a changing room for a sports pitch. We would simply ask you to carefully consider whether the main use itself falls under outdoor sport or recreation, given that the application itself states the following. A, the The application is tourism related and the majority of activities are off-site. B, the emphasis is on family groups and there is no requirement to join organised activities. C, the application is repeatedly called a base. The only other word I can find for base is camp. To say this site is anything else is misleading. D, 6 of the structures are buildings for overnight accommodation or showering. They are therefore not open recreational use. Staying overnight is integral to the proposal. It is absolutely not ancillary to the use and therefore should be deemed inappropriate. E, the use of the suggested condition limiting its use to education use seems to be contrary to NPPF and completely unenforceable in planning law. Point 2, openness in the Greenbelt. The proposal is also contrary to the NPPF in terms of openness, which is not addressed at all by the committee report. We have submitted High Court case law to the Council that clarifies new development for outdoor sport or recreation, if it causes harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, is always inappropriate, regardless of the extent of the harm, unless there are very special circumstances. Openness in the context of the Greenbelt means freedom from development, and openness is completely different to visual impact or visual amenity. 9 structures alongside paths, fencing, roads, car parking clearly cause harm to openness and the reason for including the land in the Greenbelt. This High Court judgments are relevant to all applicable planning cases. It's not about an individual set of case circumstances. On this site, buildings are not being reused, not being replaced, and being movable is irrelevant when assessing openness. These structures still cause harm. Point 3, I'm hurrying. There are serious issues with comings and goings throughout day and night, access, traffic, pedestrian safety. They've all been underestimated by the applicant, in our opinion, and not addressed by the office report or its suggested conditions. I'd just like you to note the Ramblers Association and the British Horse Society have objected on these grounds. In conclusion, we would simply ask the committee to consider very carefully the key Greenbelt policy issues alongside the many numerous other objections raised by almost the whole village, and that recognise this proposal is contrary to both local policy and the NPPF, and it contradicts recent High Court rulings. Our objection is not NIMBYism. We think it's simply the wrong proposal for this particular site, a Greenbelt site that has the very highest protection under UK planning law. Permitting this application and deeming it appropriate would set a very dangerous precedent for other open Greenbelt land throughout Waverley. I'd just like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak in these difficult times, and I'd just like to thank both members and officers for actually getting this meeting on at all. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wagstaff. In support of the application is Mr. Webb, Ben Webb. You have 4 minutes, Mr. Webb. There he is.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The nature of this proposal is the delivery of an important social benefit on a very small scale. This proposal is about creating a new and unique opportunity for young people to sample wholesome days outdoors. There is an obvious threat to the wholesome existence of young people, and so their physical and mental health, including the modern reliance on cars, screen technologies, and social media, for example. And this proposal is driven by a wish to make a life-changing difference to visitors, usually through repeat visits. Wholesome days under this proposal will normally encompass overnight stays and will have 3 key ingredients, integral to the design and integral to the actual delivery. Firstly, positive social interaction. That's promoting an environment of kindness and consideration amongst each set of visitors to make for an enjoyable experience every time. Secondly, physical exertion. And thirdly, exposure to the elements, since both of these things help to generate a sense of gratitude for the real necessities of life. These will be the advertised and clear objectives of every visit from the outset, but the delivery of the experience will be unique each time, tailored in advance, but also dynamically adapted during the visit in order to maximise these outcomes. The small scale of the proposal will allow for meticulous planning and versatility. Activities will include mountain biking in the immediate vicinity, or canoe journeys from point to point on the Basingstoke Canal, for example, or more sedately, for example, of an evening, imparting conservation knowledge or other outdoor skills. Indeed, conservation is a lot more than just a footnote in this proposal, but the approach will be to generate that lifelong interest in conservation through familiarisation and by demonstrating the enjoyment and satisfaction that only the natural world can bring. This proposal has a unique capacity to encourage people into the countryside for 3 reasons. Firstly, family participation in supervised activities is possible. Secondly, adverse weather will only enhance the outcomes rather than detracting from the experience. Thirdly, accessibility to all through a fully equipped and supervised outdoor experience. I anticipate that visitors will notably include children who don't often participate in outdoor activities through alternative outlets, perhaps because they haven't had the chance or don't thrive in large group environments or when away from their family. The fostering of a positive social experience will encourage repeat visits and a sense of an inclusive community. For term time, the proposal will actively seek to provide tailored outdoor development and education solutions for individuals or very small groups in concert with interested schools, youth supporting charities or not-for-profit organisations. For all its intended benefits, this proposal is categorically not the pursuit of a special interest unity of any local residents of the area in order to achieve some sort of subjective net social benefit. That is not the spirit or effect of this proposal. Whilst I'm at pains to convey that point, it is more relevant, of course, that the AONB board, the parish council, the planning department, the Surrey Wildlife Trust, and everyone that is familiar with the site and that has been willing to listen to the actual proposal with an open mind have been able to judge it on the facts and agree the suggested conditions on scale, to the effect that they have expertly considered and reached the reasonable and correct views on impact and on all key planning matters, and they have all endorsed the proposal. On that basis, it is of course my greatest wish that a positive decision be reached today. Any significant delay would threaten all of next year's main outdoor season and would of course be very costly. Endorsement today would enable the proposal to commence with vegetation management in September, the date recommended by the Surrey Wildlife Trust, and readied in all other aspects to start in its endeavours from March next year. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webb. Right, no more probably. Councillors, anybody wish to speak on this item? I've been very shy. Councillor Mary Lees, and then Councillor Deere, then Councillor Dixon. Councillor Mary Lees.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I do have land with ponies on, and it's exactly the same, except that we're on a hill, so the water runs off. This is clay. Believe me, you will not get away without having hard standing. There is no way on God's earth that you will be able to have a place like that without having hard standing. And I can tell you that because I've had years of that, and I've had to put hard standing with are. The other thing I would say is that you're talking about openness as being one of the most important parts of having the AONB. And when you have ponies grazing and they poach up the land, which they do, if you know anything about ponies, if you're having native ponies grazing, they usually graze on scrub land. That's what they survive on. If you put them on land like that, they will all get happily, they'll all get laminitis because that is rich, rich, rich grass. And that means you will have to fence them off. They will have to be put in different fenced areas, which again will compromise the openness of the area. So I think things like that have not been thought through properly. And I think you do have to understand that, because if they want to retain that openness aspect, you've got to think very carefully about what you're going to put on that land. And as I know quite a lot about that sort of stuff, I can tell you putting ponies on there will result in you having to fence things off. And if you want to get cars on there and turn, and if you're having it says that the density at the highest density is 40 people. 40 people is an awful lot of people on quite a small area. And I presume that won't be a quiet 40 people if there's a load of kids there. So I'm just concerned about those sort of things that I don't think you thought through properly. I also wonder if you're going to have a site like that at the end of that lane where you're going to store stuff we as horse owners all know that we usually get burgled at least once every 2 or 3 years, and it's something you have to be aware of. So I don't know if you've thought about that. I don't know if somebody's going to be there permanently on site, or whether you're going to have some sort of surveillance or light which could cause pollution. There's things I think that have not been thought of carefully in this, and I just wanted to say those, to point those things out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've all seen little parcels of greenbelt land that in common sense look nothing like greenbelt, someone's back garden or a little triangle of land in an otherwise built up area. But this is not one of those oddities. This site is what the greenbelt is all about. This is a barrier to protect and preserve the character of the villages in our borough, in this case, Graveswood. This is pure green belt. In considering the application, you may say that this is green belt and that's the end of it, but that is not the case, as you may know. Under the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, there are occasions, so-called very special circumstances, where development can be permitted, as many members will be aware. A couple of these are sport and recreation, where the openness of the land is preserved. You can imagine football or cricket pitches and maybe a scorer's hut or something fitting into that description. However, these proposals are for a sort of 8-building shanty town serviced by a track inadequate even for the existing residents' needs, let alone the additional traffic that will be generated by this proposal. And it shows just how far detached from reality Surrey County Council officers have become in saying that they see no problem. And eight buildings of various types, by definition, ladies and gentlemen, will not preserve the openness of the green belt. A toilet block, a shower block, a shelter, a storage block, and parking. The officers state this doesn't matter because they consider this appropriate development, and in my view, that is simply wrong. As you know, the application and officers' report mentions educational use, but there is no educational exception in the list of NPPF very special circumstances. So that approach must fail too. I was interested that the speaker in favour did not address with barely a single syllable the material planning matters here. So for those, and indeed the other reasons described eloquently by the local resident, we are faced with an easy decision for once, fellow members. That decision must be to refuse this application, and I propose that a motion be put to that effect, citing conflict with NPPF policy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dear. Of course, we've got to vote for the recommendation before we go to any further, I think. But Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to ask Philippa, can I just check with you, Philippa, the applicant, is that Mr. Ben Webb, who has currently been working for the Surrey Outdoor Learning and Development Centre? And for the rest of the members, the Surrey Outdoor Learning and Development Centre is an outreach team which provides a variety of sports activities sponsored by Surrey County Council. And they have centres across Surrey. Philip, I'm assuming this is the same person. So this is the experienced member who's previously worked for Surrey County Council, providing outdoor activities for the schools and our young people around the county. I think, as I've got teenage children, and I know how difficult it is to find, obviously they're teenagers now, but when they were below 12, it was extremely difficult sometimes to find summer occupations for them. And I think a camp like this, which is local, where children could actually go on a day basis, or even to go and camp for a couple of nights, would be a real bonus to local parents. And we haven't seen any mention of this. And I think the fact that if Philippa can confirm that this is the same Ben Webb, then we've got a very experienced person here who would probably do an extremely good job. And the fact that the authority, that we haven't had any objections from the AONB, would say to me that this is probably quite a good plan, and also yes, to encourage. Yes, that's what I think. I think I'm in favour of this. I think it is quite a nice scheme.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ashwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application refers to land in the Greenbelt AONB. The report refers to it as semi-rural. I would have said more rural than anything else. I also went down muddy track after it had been raining, and believe you me, it is muddy. I hope most members of the committee have been down there and had a look at it. It is on heavy clay. Councillor Merrilees has already said a problem there. The buried water treatment works. The toilets are going to have problems. They need electricity as well. Electrics, that's going to provide a fair amount of light pollution in this rural area, and it will certainly impact on the residential amenity. Mentioning outdoor activities, canoeing, kayaking, paddleboarding, isn't very much water around there. Where are they going to go? We talk about canals, but Frensham Pond, well, every year we get the algae on there, so you are recommended not to enter the water. Interesting. But the only way you can get there to the water for all these activities is by car. And you're going to be traveling up and down Muddy Lane continually. And I would just mention that the two properties that are there are right at the entrance to Muddy Lane. Van Walt and the sewage works and the horse establishment are right at the other end. But I would just wonder what condition we're going to put on to move the huts every now and again. Who's going to monitor it? I can't see that being done. I just can't. I noticed the MPPF, but I think on this occasion, this is a step too far in the Greenbelt. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, finished? So are you finished, Councillor Ashwood?
About a minute ago, Chairman. Yes, thank you very much.
Are you finished? Okay, so I've froze, so apologies. Councillor Rubini or Councillor Keane, I don't know which one should speak.
Thank you. It's Councillor Rubini. Councillor Keane will raise her hand when it's their turn. I've been down there like most other councillors. I know the Grayswood area. It is a very quiet rural area. It goes past the school and you end up in these fields. And of course, it is Greenbelt area. Now, I'd like to thank Councillor Dixon for the fact that she's outlined who this gentleman is working for Surrey County Council. And I applaud the concept. I am in great favour of youth, and I think the idea of getting youth out and about in the countryside is a wonderful idea. However, my problem is this appears to be the wrong place. It is a field. Is it exceptional circumstances? I can't see that it is, personally. I think that the buildings themselves, the showers, and then to talk about off-site activities, appears to me that this is just a place for them to sleep while they do other things. I can't see a proper business plan. I'm sorry, but I don't think these are exceptional circumstances to allow this particular site to be used. As I say, if we could find another site, I would certainly like to help and get it somewhere where it could be used by young people as a base to go out camping. And as I say, I applaud the concept, but not in this location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Rubini. I just want to stress, actually, that we're dealing with the application here, not who it is. So can we make that quite clear? Right, moving on. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So I really applaud actually the applicant in wanting to provide the sorts of services that he seems to be looking to want to provide through this application. It is very important to offer services to young people and in particular to those who are disadvantaged, and give them the opportunity to participate in outdoor activities, to help build their confidence. I personally benefited from those when I was young, and then went to lead those sorts of initiatives as I grew up. And you can see the complete transformation in some individuals when they get the opportunity to participate and do things that they didn't necessarily think they could do. So I completely applaud and the initiative and what he's trying to achieve. I think the problem with this is the sort of the impact from the buildings from a planning perspective is one issue, and there almost needs to be a bit more information actually on the parameters of the sort of businesses and the activities that are going to be happening, because they will also have an impact to a degree on the site that he's chosen. So I think there's a bit of ambiguity there that doesn't help, but essentially in terms of what he wants to achieve, I'm very for that. Just slightly torn as to whether there's enough information to really understand what the impact will be.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, nobody could support young people more than I. I've spent my entire career doing that, and I still do it. But we're here as a planning committee looking at a planning application in the Green Belt. And we have spent months debating whether or not we should have things in the Green Belt and what is acceptable and what isn't. We've made policy and we've defended policy. I cannot see how this is acceptable in the Green Belt. I just don't even begin to see why it's acceptable, regardless of any good that may come out of it. That's not what we're here for. We're here to look at policy and see whether or not this conforms to policy. Now, I read the officer's report, and I read it over and over again, and I went back to national guidance, and I still cannot see that this is an appropriate use. There is far too much building going on, albeit movable, but it doesn't matter. The principle of filling that part of the Green Belt with so many properties, you're not dealing here with occasional, putting up a barn or something, in an area where it's going to be used. You are changing the whole nature of this overnight with these buildings. And I'm grateful for all the practical advice from other people, but from my point of view, it's purely and utterly a Green Belt decision. And I am not convinced that we will retain any of the openness when we put all these buildings there. And I'm also scared of the ongoing development. Not that the applicant is remotely going to be doing that, but I'm talking about the future. Once you've got the principle of a building in the Green Belt, it's much harder to defend the openness later. So I have to say, I'm with Councillor Deere on this one. I really think this is a step too far in the Green Belt, and I think it's contrary to policy. So I'm afraid I can't support this.
Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. I can't support it on the basis that I can't see how the conditions would be enforceable in accordance with NPPF paragraph 55. I also can't understand why this is a development that would be suitable for Green Belt. So for those two reasons, I can't support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, welcome to Councillor Deere. Does Councillor Keane wish to speak? Yes.
Yes, please. Thank you. Like Councillor Coburn, I have concerns about this. Like Councillor Rubini, I've been down to Muddy Lane. It's a very, very quiet, narrow lane. I'm concerned about people walking down there, dog walkers, ramblers, coming into contact with cars going up and down. Also the fact that they say the buildings are movable, but they're not. You've got permanent buildings there. And I am very concerned about them being in the Green Belt and AONB. And I'm very concerned that over time, there could be an extension to this. And I think it sets a very, very bad precedent. And for those reasons, I cannot support this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, I've got one more hand. Cassidy, do you want to come back and then I'll go to Philippa Staddon, please?
Okay, just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I've almost had the wind taken out of my sails by Councillor Coburn, to whom I'm grateful. I mean, the fact that planning consent goes with the land, not the individual, is a fundamental, is a basic of planning, of any planning knowledge at all. This consent, were it given, could be adopted by any vast leisure undertaking tomorrow morning. It's not a personal matter. No matter how much we like the idea of getting children off wretched electronic devices, out into the open air, out in the fresh air, having social relations with each other and all the rest of it, this is a planning matter. This is the green belt. And as Carol Coburn has said, Councillor Coburn has said, this is just not conforming to any of the policies that we've established over time as far as the preservation of the openness of the green belt is concerned. Thank you. Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Are you there, Mr. Chairman?
Where is he? Temporarily lost the chairman.
Oh dear. Can the vice chair take over just briefly?
I know Philippa Staddon, the planning officer, has her hand up to speak. So Philippa, if you want to come in.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to suggest the same. So there weren't many sort of questions, but I've made a note of all of the comments, and maybe if I could just touch on some of those, if that would be helpful. So with regard to the grazing, the whole site at the moment is in agricultural use, albeit it isn't in active agricultural use. So grazing could take place on that site now without them seeking specific approval for that. So that just to touch on that. With regard to the storage, the applicant has set out in the design and access statement and the sort of quite significant additional information that I've sought from him that any sort of storage of expensive equipment or sort of sensitive equipment would be removed and stored off site. So the on-site storage is just for stuff that would be appropriate to be stored in that location. The MPPF, so I think that there's a lot of sort of debate here regarding the appropriateness of the use in the greenbelt, and that is fine for it to be debated. But I would just touch on, and I've set it out in the officer report, but I would just touch on the fact that the MPPF sets out that the construction of new buildings is not necessarily inappropriate if they're for and in connection with the change of use of the land for appropriate facilities. So that is the basis on which we have reached the conclusion that this is not inappropriate development. So just wanted to reiterate that. As a number of you have said, who the applicant isn't relevant. The permission does go with the land. So I think that is all the points I wanted to touch on based on the queries that were raised. As I say, much of the discussion was debate, and that is for members to reach a conclusion on here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have we got the chairman back with us?
Yeah, I'm back. Can't keep
Councillor Beeman, carry on.
Councillor Hunt, you got your hand up? Can we go to the vote?
No, it's okay. You can go to the vote.
All right. Okay. Well, the recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 to 16 and informants 1 to 8 permission be granted. Could you have the sort of Kimberly? Could you put a little word?
Against. Councillor Keane, against.
Sorry, I haven't got the poll, Chairman. And I got it last time. I haven't got it this time.
Oh, really?
Councillor Coburn, how do you wish to vote? Against?
Yeah.
Unmute, Carol.
Sorry, against.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's 11, 3 in favour and 11 against.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, guess what? We have to now move on. Is anybody prepared to put forward reasons for another recommendation? Presumably, land in the green, presumably, yes. Hello? No.
What are we doing?
I'm getting lost. I'm back again now. I'm having bad
Oh,
internet
right.
connection tonight. Okay. I presume we have another resolution. You know, want to propose anything?
I'm lost.
I'm lost.
Do we need another recommendation? I'm completely lost, Chairman.
Yes, we do need another recommendation.
The recommendation to grant approval was lost, sorry. So we're looking for an alternative recommendation.
In the public green belt.
Councillor Coburn, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, yes, I was just going to put the alternative recommendation that permission is refused. If I have a seconder, I'll give a reason as well.
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Simon Deere.
And I think, to my mind, it's the quantum of development associated with this application in the Green Belt that will fail to protect the openness. And I don't think we have seen, have had special circumstances demonstrated that this quantum of the built form in the Green Belt is acceptable.
Okay. I was made words, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if I could propose some words, I would propose the proposal by virtue of the quantum of development would constitute inappropriate greenbelt development that would fail to preserve the openness of the greenbelt, and no very special circumstances have been put forward to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt or any other harm. The proposal was therefore contrary to policy RE2 of the Local Plan 2018 Part 1 and the MPPF 2019. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Everybody happy with that? Can we vote on that?
Well, I'm not, Mr. Chairman, I have slight reservations about starting to talk about references to quantum, because, you know, next week we'll have another one with a block presently described omitted. I would rather have rather delete any reference to quantum, simply go with the officer's basic form of words.
Are we all happy with that?
Agreed.
Councillor Coburn?
Yes, it's just that, as we all know, you're allowed a changing room if you've got a load of football pitches. So there's certain things that are accepted if you've got a change of use. And so by quantum, I was just trying to make sure that we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot, but I'm quite happy with the wording.
Well, that can be judged on its merits at the time, obviously, Carol.
Yeah. Okay, Philippa, do you want to read that again, just to make sure we all know what we're talking about?
Sorry, would you like Philippa to just?
Yes, please. Let's read it again.
Sorry, Chairman. Okay, so the proposal would constitute inappropriate green belt development that would fail to preserve the openness of the green belt, and no very special circumstances have been put forward to outweigh the harm to the green belt or any other harm. The proposal was therefore contrary to policy RE2 of the Local Plan Part 1 2018 and the MPPF 2019. Thank you.
Vote on that, please.
Councillor Keane for.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's the application is refused, solid reasons given. Thank you very much. Can we move on, please, to the last item for public speaking, which is WA 2019-1215, land at 8 Kiln Lane, Lower Bourne. The proposal is the erection of a dwelling and detached garage as amended by plans received on the 22nd of November 2019 and as amplified by ecological information and further plans received on the 6th of February 2020 and flood risk assessment received on the 9th of July 2020, an amended description. Officer is Carl Housden to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Just trying to share the screen. So there's one verbal update relating to what Beth explained earlier at the start of the meeting. So the Business and Planning Act gained royal assent on the 22nd of July. This act allows for the revival of planning applications that have expired between the 23rd of March 2020 and the day before the provision of this act comes into force, which is the 19th of August. To revive a lapsed consent within this period, the applicant would need to apply to the council for environmental approval. This is a material consideration to the site as the previous application WA 2016-2277 lapsed on the 18th of May 2020. While the environmental application would be required to revive this consent, officers note that there have been no additional environmental issues found for the current scheme under consideration. The erection of a detached dwelling and detached garage at 8 Kiln Lane, which utilises an existing access from Winston Walk. Here we can see the location plan where the access onto Winston Walk is seen to the south of the red line. Here you can see the aerial view of the site where to the western boundary is TPO, Group TPO 0909. Photo A shows the end of Winston Walk with number 3 on the left, number 4 on the right, and the existing access in the middle. Photo B shows the access looking from the application site to Winston Walk. Photo C shows the top of the track looking towards the application site. You note the host dwelling 8 Kiln Lane on the right-hand side. Photo D shows the southern edge of the site adjacent to 3 Winston Walk. And photo E is at the western boundary looking back towards the access track, showing the outbuildings and garage proposed demolition. Here's the elevations of the proposed 5-bed dwelling. It's more traditional style. Here are the floor plans, the garage plans, and the proposed block plan. And this is the previously approved scheme WA 2016-2277. While this has lapsed, it does hold some weight in the planning balance and shares properties of the current scheme. So the matters of consideration are the design and impact on visual amenity. Officers are satisfied that the design would adhere to the Surrey vernacular and be of appropriate bulk and mass for the proposed plot. Furthermore, the proposal would have minimal impact on the street scene owing to its landlocked position. The impact on residential amenity. Officers are satisfied that owing to the reduction in land levels, the separation distance from neighbours, the proposal will not cause a loss of immunity to neighbours. The less than substantial harm identified to the building of local merit to the north would be outweighed by the provision of the new dwelling. The County Highways Authority have confirmed the proposal is acceptable in terms of highway safety, including the use of Winston Walk for non-heavy goods vehicles during the construction process. The group TPO tree on the west side of the site will not be harmed subject to conditions, and Surrey Wildlife Trust have confirmed that subject to conditions, biodiversity on the site will be adequately protected and enhanced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have some public speakers on this one. And the first is Janet Fernley, which is in objection to the proposal. And you have 4 minutes, Janet.
Sorry, this is Ellen Al Hashimi. I'm speaking. It isn't Janet Fernley.
Oh. Oh, sorry, apologies. Go ahead, 4 minutes.
No problem. I live at 3 Winston Walk. Over the course of 4 planning applications for this plot, there have been a total of 52 objections from residents who would all be negatively affected. For this particular application, there were 14 original objections, 7 more after the first amendment and 4 more after the second. Contrary to what is stated by the officer in his statement, this is not because issues have been resolved with each amendment, but because residents did not believe it was a requirement to keep restating their ongoing objections with each change made to the plans. On behalf of every resident of Winston Walk, all objections made remain. In the officer's statement, he states that it is accepted that number 3 will suffer a loss of light to the kitchen. He states there is glazing in this room to the northeast and the south. This is incorrect. The only glazing in this room is to the northeast. Loss of light is clearly a material consideration. However, he states that this holds less weight as a kitchen is not, quote, a habitable space. Our kitchen is very large. It has a sofa, television area, together with a dining area. It is our main living space within the house and therefore is a habitable space further to the definition in the council SPD. The officer states that the issues regarding the hedge between number 3 and the site are not a material consideration. However, the inevitable loss of the mature hedge will lead to a significant loss of privacy and a shield against noise. Loss of privacy is a material consideration. Further, the council SPD clearly state, quote, if a development is likely to threaten the long-term survival of an existing tree or hedge through the construction phase, then it is unlikely that the council would accept the development. With respect to 4 and 6 Kiln Lane, they too will suffer a loss of privacy as they will have a number of windows overlooking into the rear of their properties and gardens. No site section plans have been supplied for this impact. The officer states that any damage to number 3, the hedge, or our private road, Winston Walk, is a civil matter. This is a tacit admission in our view that such damage is likely, and this is unacceptable. Regarding access for construction traffic, it is not necessary to use Winston Walk. It must be appreciated that the walk is a private road owned exclusively by its 5 residents. It is divided up as a jigsaw, each of the residents owning the land outside their house. Each owner of the road can have a car parked outside their house as space on driveways is limited. When this occurs, another car can just pass. Non-HGV site traffic cannot. Residents cannot be prevented from parking on land which they each own. There are 6 resident children who ride their bikes and play in the walk, and site traffic would clearly be extremely dangerous. Non-HGV access via Winston Walk means that the applicant can use it as a rat run or have numerous vehicles arriving one after the other, potentially even queuing into the walk. It is very clear from recent preparations observed on the plot that the applicant intends to remove spoil from the site via Winston Walk. This alone will require an estimated 1,000 non-HGV vehicle movements. This will block access for residents. Further, there is no space on the walk for turning. This requires even cars to use the driveways of numbers 3 and 4. On all previous applications, access via Winston Walk has not been suitable. It has previously been stated, quote, officers consider it appropriate to prevent construction traffic from making use of this access. Nothing has changed since those applications. We ask you to balance the negative impact on the 14 different households who have objected to these plans with the 1 individual's wishes to build. We ask that these plans for this oversized, overbearing property are rejected in their entirety. However, if you are not with us with respect to that, we ask in the strongest terms possible that a condition is added to the plans not to allow any site traffic to use Winston Walk for the construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And another public speaker is Andy Brown, who wishes to speak in support of the application. Andy, yeah. Thank you. You got 4 minutes.
Hopefully you can see me and hear me.
Yes.
Yes, fantastic. So thank you. I believe the principle of building a single dwelling has been established by the previous application that whilst lapsed, due to the recent government legislation, is, aside from a couple of hoops, is valid until 2021. So the application today is for a replacement to this approved and valid permission. So I shall cover the objections raised to this specific scheme rather than the overall principle. And I think the issues seem to fall into two specific areas: construction traffic and impact on number 3, Winston Walk. As the officer has stated, Highways have raised no objections. And I do actually believe Winston Walk is suitable for all construction traffic, including HGVs, as evidenced by the fact that over the last few years, both 3 and 5 Winston Walk have had extensions, and very recently also landscaping works, which have involved HGV movements. Also, number 4 had a skip for building work recently, and the council collects refuse weekly using a HGV via the street. That said, I understand that opinion is strong using Winston Walk for construction traffic. So I have amended my proposal to just request none HGV traffic as a backup. Now, all spoil will be removed via Kiln Lane, and we have a conveyor belt system to enable that to take place. And that will all be part of a construction management condition, which I believe has been mandated or would be mandated. With regard to overlooking or overbearing on number 3, the proposal you have before is a revision of my initial application, which was amended based on feedback from the initial representation, from officers and from the heritage team. As the report states, the officer considers this new proposal now meets the planning guidelines. With regard to 3 Winston Walk, the proposal is under the 25-degree line. Also, there is a 2.2 metre high retaining wall between number 3 and the proposal. On top of that retaining wall, there is an earth bank and a very established hedge. The hedge is in excess of 2 metres high and is 3 metres deep, of which a metre of the depth is within the boundary of 3 Winston Walk. So it is partly maintained by Winston Walk, partly maintained by Kiln Lane. That 4.5 metre high boundary runs the full length of the boundary between number 3 and the proposal. So in the back garden and within the kitchen of 3 Winston Walk, the proposal will not be visible with all of that taken into account. And for 4 and 6 Kiln Lane, there is an established boundary of 3.5 metres high, and we are sinking our proposal down by 1 metre. So in effect, the proposal is 4.5 metres below a very established boundary. So for these reasons, I commend you to accept the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you very much.
We lost the chairman again. It's very careless.
No, he does still seem to be here. Councillor Beeman? Councillor Beeman, unless his feed has frozen temporarily.
I believe we had Councillor Roger Blishen to speak next.
It doesn't look like his feed's frozen because you can see him moving around.
I'm here.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
Councillor Bishop was having internet problems and he submitted something in writing, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Oh.
Right. Anyway.
4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. I'm one of the ward councillors for the area, which I know very well. We maintain our objection to the erection of a dwelling of this size and scale, reasons being negative impact on the neighbours' amenity and an unsuitable access from Winston Walk, not being compliant with the Farnham Design Statement and Farnham Neighbourhood Plan Policy FNP1. There is considerable planning history on this site. The scale of the proposed dwelling is very large for such an enclosed site and will have an overbearing effect on the residents of both Winston Walk and Kiln Lane. It will also have an impact on their amenity. There will be a loss of light, particularly sunlight, to the back gardens of 4 and 5 Winston Walk in the afternoons. Winston Walk is a small, private and narrow cul-de-sac which is maintained by its residents. The road surface there is not of a suitable specification to carry heavy construction traffic. The Surrey County Council Highways Authority letter of December 2019 states that heavy goods vehicle traffic will be not allowed to use this route to access the drive entrance to number 8 Kiln Lane, which is at the far end of Winston Way. However, unspecified non-heavy goods vehicles, whatever they are, it doesn't say, will be allowed by the same Surrey County Council Highways Authority letter to use the Winston Way route to access that number 8 Kiln Lane entrance track. As regards the dust cart, the refuse lorry, I understand it only backs a short way into the road of Winston Walk where it has to stop. The operatives then have to push the householders' wheelie bins back to the lorry to empty them and then return them back to their owners' properties. Winston Walk has no pedestrian footpaths at all for the safety of its residents. Also, many of the young families there have children who play in the normally very quiet roadway. This further makes it unsuitable for any busy construction traffic. There are already parking problems there for private cars due to the lack of road spaces for them to use, particularly when they have visitors. Winston Walk has unsighted exits both ways. If you drive out from there, you can neither see left nor right down Ford Lane or up Ford Lane on the way out to Ford Lane. And nearby on the left, at the Ford Lane to Burnt Hill Road junction, when turning right out of Ford Lane, it is completely and dangerously blind, as anyone knows that uses it. Since the inception of this planning application and throughout the 2 planning amendments, there have been some 24 neighbours' letters of objections and none of approval. These letters have come from the residents of Winston Walk, Kiln Lane and Burnt Hill Road. Now to Kiln Lane. The narrow steep access to the Kiln Lane site is between numbers 6 and 8 Kiln Lane and is very restricted in sight. There may therefore prove difficulties in driving the heavy goods vehicles up to the site there. So they may have to be unloaded on the Kiln Lane roadway outside and have their considerable loads transferred to site by smaller vehicles. All construction activities and vehicle unloading should be made on site and not on the public roadway. Kiln Lane has a steep slope commencing immediately outside the entrance access to the Kiln Lane number 8 site, and it is unsighted from there down towards the Fawn stream. Many residents and others frequently park their cars in Kiln Lane as there is little off-street parking available for the number of cars involved. The street lighting in Kiln Lane is inadequate for that area. Broomwood Way, leading off the other side of Kiln Lane, is not suitable for parking either or for heavy traffic due to it having an unmade road surface. The nature of the Lower Bourne area is semi-rural and under threat from further development, which reduces this attractive character. There is currently a disused badger set on the site. It is not uncommon for badgers to take over unused sets for further use.
Councillor Fish, you've had 4 minutes now. If you'd like to wrap up, please.
Okay. There is evidence of dieback on the boundary site hedge of number 3 Winston Walk. This may spread along until this hedge needs replacing. The new hedge will take some time to grow to the required privacy height. This hedge gives privacy from the proposed building site at number 8 Kiln Lane. That's the end of my comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Apologies. Councillor Hyman, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there is quite some history to this. Now, can I please refer members to page 9 of 29 of this report, which is page 91 of their agenda papers. Halfway down the page under Principle of Development, members are advised that the Council must take a positive approach that reflects the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and of course that does not apply where an appropriate assessment is required and where an appropriate assessment is not available and has not been conducted. If we move down to paragraph 10.2 below that, you see that the 2014 application, 2014-2237, was dismissed at appeal due to the impact on the Thames Basin heaths, and other aspects were deemed acceptable to the inspector. But of course, as I have made clear, and as the Crondall case confirms, and as our solicitor has said, we will conform. There is no appropriate assessment of the mitigation for this. If you look at the very end of that page where it says that 2016-2277, which is the lapsed application, was approved, and turning over the page, for the erection of a 3-bed dwelling. The permission recently lapsed. However, it is still a material consideration. That's the advice they're receiving. Of course, that is overridden by the fact that the Crondall case has confirmed that it was granted unlawfully. And contrary to Article 63 of the Habitats Directive and Regulation 63 of the Habitats regulations, the UK regulations, and contrary to the National Planning Policy Guidance on Appropriate Assessments issued in June 2019. So again, consent must be refused on those grounds for this development. I will allow members to debate the others. Obviously, I don't need to go through the other reasons, but it is my duty and all other members' duty to refuse this application on the grounds there's no appropriate assessment on the impact on of the Thames Basin heaths, because there's no appropriate assessment of the mitigation, and there is no appropriate assessment of the in-combination impact upon the Weldon heaths, phase 1 of Frensham. Simply a matter of doing our duty to our residents, and it's not lawful to grant consent to this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hyman. Right, 3 speakers I've got so far. Councillor Coburn.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't really know where to start, but we're told that previous applications are material considerations, which is fine, except that everything's changed on this site. If you look on page 83, you will see that plot 8 Kiln Lane doesn't now have anything to do with this site. When we had the other application in, it was the owner of number 8 Kiln Lane who was going to develop the site, and the access was going to be from Kiln Lane using the access at 8, and we specifically said no vehicular access from Winston Walk, because that vehicular access was put in for the farm when Kiln Lane was a farm, when it was Kiln Farm, and it is narrow. I mean, it is an emergency sort of access. It's the first time I saw it, it was totally green. I mean, nobody had obviously been up it for years. So I have a question here, which is, are you sure you can access this site from Kiln Lane? Because if you look at the picture, you can't. Kiln Lane, the number 8 Kiln Lane, seems to me to have put fences up, had a whole lot of soil. Yes, thank you. A whole lot of soil delivered the other day, and that caused chaos with the large vehicle trying to back into the narrow entrance. So I do have real difficulty in relating this application to the others. quite understand that the applicant has got an application. I wouldn't argue against that. But that application was specific and it did protect Winston Walk. Now we're in a totally different situation here because it isn't the same applicant. The applicant who owns 8 Kiln Lane does not own this site. So he is now trying to come in totally from Winston Walk. As Councillor Blishen has said, Winston Walk is like a little cluster of 4 or 5. You can't even call it a road, which is presumably why it's called Winston Walk. You know, it is really, and anybody, I avoid driving down Ford Lane, I have to be honest. There's certain roads in the Bourne that, you know, I do when I have to, but it is narrow, it gets very, very narrow, very steep. And as for Kiln Lane, I mean, my daughter used to live at the bottom of it, and I always used to think, well, if all else fails, I just lie down and roll, you know. I mean, it is so, so steep. So I really have a problem with this. I have a problem with the fact that I don't think the previous applications actually are relevant when we've got a totally different owner and a totally different situation with a landlocked site with no access from Kiln Lane, and the access which was granted to Kiln Farm, which we protected last time because of its inadequacy and the amenity of the residents of Winston Walk. This is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. And everybody who's walked around the Bourne knows we have hills and bits and bobs. I mean, the topography is a nightmare. You see a flat picture, you think, oh, well, it's all right. That building of local merit is exquisite. The whole circle of those buildings is absolutely exquisite. It really is beautiful. And, you know, to have something as big as this overlooking that building of local merit, to say nothing of 4 and 6 Kiln Lane, it is vast. And we haven't had sections. I haven't seen a section to show me how the residents of 4 and 6 Kiln Lane are affected by this proposal. So I'm sorry, I accept the principle, you know, I'm not going back in history, but we have to remember that this is totally, totally different from before because of the land ownership. And I, for one, could not support anything that basically pushes HDVs into Winston Walk. I just cannot do that. So unless I am given a guarantee that number 8 Kiln Lane is quite keen to have the vehicles going past this beautiful building of local merit to access this site, then I couldn't possibly support it. Because the last time when we did support it, it was because we were protecting Winston Walk. So, you know, to me, you can't put the two together. We're in a totally different situation now. We haven't got the land in the same ownership, and we haven't got the same, therefore, we haven't got the same immediate access. So I need clarification, please, on access. I need clarification on the fencing round 8 Kiln Lane now, the shared access, which you can see, which is outside that area. So, you know, as things stand at the moment, I couldn't possibly support this because I really don't think I can protect the amenities of any of the residents. And until I'm reassured that I can do, I couldn't possibly support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, before I ask the officer to come back on your question, can I ask Councillor Dixon to speak, please?
Yes, I think Councillor Coburn has said a lot of what I want to say, but I've been looking at the Google photographs of it because the applicant told us that they were going to access the site via Kiln Lane. And I assumed that he was talking about through number 8, and the diagram we've got on page 83 would indicate that maybe there is some space. But in fact, when you look at the aerial photographs of this site on Google, you can see that number 8 has got a number of outbuildings and the entrance is quite narrow. And I really can't see how you're going to get into this site at all from Kiln Lane. And I would like to ask our planning officers if the access from Kiln Lane is a solution, as the applicant told us in his presentation, whether or not we could possibly have some photographs of how the necessary trucks are going to get access to it, because it is clearly that the access from Winston Way is tiny, and it would be a great intrusion on number 3 Winston Walk to have a vast, and also it's very clear from the satellite photograph that both the privacy of Winston Walk and the 2 houses on Kiln Lane is going to be seriously degraded. And I think this negative impact on the neighbours is a very is something which I don't think I would like to see go forward. So that's why I'll be voting against this, unless the planning officers can provide us additional information on this Kiln Lane access, which to me looks impossible. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Martin.
I agree with the past two speakers, especially Carol Coburn. The proposed dwelling will adversely affect the setting of the 18th century farmhouse. I walked the Winston Walk. It's a very, very narrow lane, and I think it's wrong for HGVs or any other large vans, etc., to go through there. And I think would have an adverse impact on their neighbours. And actually, the whole application dominates, from what I can look at, Winston Walk, especially since many of the Winston Walk neighbours are bungalows. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. As the councillor that lives closest to this site, I thought I'd better go. Yes, I do, Carl. I live in Burnt Hill Road.
Not as the crow flies, Councillor Clark.
Well, I'm not a crow. Anyway, seriously, I visited the site. Although I know it well, I visited the applicant site earlier today, and I was able to view the proposed access route for construction through Winston Walk, and of course the area of land within this application. Now, whilst there is clearly an existing access to the rear of the property in number 8 Kiln Lane, it was difficult enough for me to access this route with a car, never mind the likelihood of a 7.5 ton non-HGV attempting the same route. When I attempted to turn round, it took me 8-point turn to get out of Winston Walk. I'm pretty sure that Surrey Highways probably conducted their assessment as usual, bound to a desk. If this access route were to form part of the permission, it would create severe disruption for the residents of this quiet residential cul-de-sac, and of course the likelihood of damage to their boundary fencing and hedges. If the applicant is happy for HGV access via Kiln Lane, then that's where all access should take place. Otherwise, Winston Walk could well become a congested parking lot. Now, whilst I was there, I was also able to clearly view the land to the rear of number 8. It is not as large as the photographs depicted in the case officer's presentation. And considering the size of the building proposed by the applicant, I feel that the size of the plot is not sufficient to provide sufficient amenity and outdoor space for future residents. So in conclusion, I would support the comments made by Farnham Town Council objecting to the size, scale, impact on neighbouring amenity and, of course, the unsuitable access. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Chris French, I think you want to come in, do you?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to, there's been a lot of discussion about the method of construction and concerns about that side of things. And I mean, from a planning perspective, that's a very temporary situation and something that is normally covered off via a condition where we will agree what the appropriate details are. We've recommended a condition and we could add an informative to say that HGVs shouldn't be using Winston Walk. I think really the concentration should really be on the permanent, the more permanent situation in terms of the dwelling and the access, rather than the temporary situation in terms of construction. I think we would find it difficult to pursue a reason for refusal on construction grounds when invariably something could be acceptable, and we could agree that through the conditions. So that was the only points I wanted to make sure we covered, and potentially an informative guiding them away from HGV movements on Winston Walk, which we would then agree via the condition, would be the appropriate mechanism. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Coburn, you want to come back on that one?
I do, because it isn't just the construction and the method of construction that worries me. It's the fact that we have a landlocked site here with no access that we think is suitable. Now, until you can say to me, oh yes, you can go in through number 8 in perpetuity, because that was the host property of this piece of land last time, then I am not happy, because we deliberately last time looked at Winston Walk and said Winston Walk cannot take the traffic. We actually said it in our refusal, or sorry, in our granting permission, we put in the condition. So, you know, we are completely illogical if we are saying now, let us leave aside the fact that, you know, we can't get in through 8 Kiln Lane, we'll use Winston Walk. Well, it hasn't changed. The people are the same, the bungalows are the same. So basically, I want to know, and I don't know, that the applicant has got permission to use the access at 8 Kiln Lane. Because if you look at the picture, there is a fence round it. There's not a hole in the fence for him to get his lorries through. You've got, as Councillor Dixon said, a ridiculously tight entrance into number 8. It's the old sort of entrance. It is so tight, and it bends to go towards the buildings of local merit. I mean, we're not talking here of a great big drive that you can just easily go up. I want reassurance for the residents that what we are putting them through, it's not just during the construction phase, it's for life. We've got this landlocked site, and I am not satisfied that the access to it in the future or during construction has been identified and will protect the amenity of the neighbours. That's my issue. Everyone can take some interim inconvenience, but that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about a lovely building of local merit with a very tight access, completely now, looking at the plan, fenced off. So you've now got this landlocked site, which then has got this narrow access, which was granted to the farm when the Kiln Lane farm was there. So to me, it's not a question of just fiddling around during construction. It's a long-term access problem to this site. And how can we give planning permission when we haven't a clue how anything is going to access this site in the future? I just find I have got no reassurance from the officers that they fully understand the landlocked nature of this site and the difficulty of access. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coburn. Right, Councillor Bishop, as ward councillor, you have the right to sum up. Do you want to say anything else or not? Councillor Bishop? No. Sounds okay. We'll move on then. Right, I shall read out the recommendation. That's subject to conditions 1 to 25 and in 1 to 13, permission be granted. Can we put the vote up, please, Kimberley? I'll Paul.
Against? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Councillor Keane.
Yes.
9 in favour, 13 against and 1 abstention.
I think that's fairly clear cut. Right. Guess what? We need another resolution. Anyone wish to? Chris French. Muted.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one point that we do need to clarify was the access that was agreed under the previous application. And if that's okay, Carl would be able to show that on his screen. Is that okay, Chairman? Thank you.
It's okay. Carl?
It should be sharing now. So yeah, it's as you can see, it's the same access from Winston Walk, using that access way showed in the photographs previously. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, okay. Do we have somebody to propose another recommendation, please? All right. Chris, again. Yes. Muted, Chris.
Sorry, my hand was going down. Apologies.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I was just going to propose that permission be refused. If I have a seconder.
Anyone wish to second? Yes, we got.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Dear. Right, the reasons, therefore. Do the officers wish to suggest some words?
I think we might need a bit of clarification about what the refusal would be on, if that's okay. Thank you.
Anybody wish to suggest any wording?
I think it's got an overbearing effect on the neighbours.
Overdevelopment, then. Yes. Councillor Coburn?
Development.
Yes, Chairman. I mean, it's the size and the scale. The one that has got permission, regardless of whether or not you can get into it, and the way we presented it was to protect Winston Walk during construction, is smaller than this one. It's the size of this, the size of this, and the everything about it, you know, is against, I think, TD1, FMP1. It just is too large and overbearing. I think it's overdevelopment. I think it's contrary to D1, D4, TD1, all these. It's the size and the scale. And I think that it will have a harmful effect on the listed building. I don't see how it can't. You've got a beautiful listed building there. I mean, it is honestly exquisite. If you haven't been there, you should go. It is an exquisite set of buildings. You know, it's more than just one building. It's all very, very lovely. And that's the problem with the access to this site, because you've got narrow lanes going past beautiful buildings. So as far as I'm concerned, it's inappropriate in terms of scale, size, neighbours' amenity, all the things. It's just too big for that site. The one that was granted is smaller and more acceptable.
Right. The others wish to put that into words for us? Yes. Chris? Carl?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think we got two reasons there. One, in terms of the scale and character of the building was kind of discussed, and the other was to do with the impact on residential amenity in terms of overbearing impacts. And both those reasons would be in relation to D1 and D4 and TD one of the of part one as well. That was my understanding.
And FNP1, please.
FNP1, yes, thank you.
And the design statement, please.
In terms of the impact on the local listed, is it local listed building? The building of local merit, sorry. I think that would be a separate reason if that was what was put forward.
Do we wish for that as a separate?
I would certainly recommend we put that forward. I mean, I can't tell you how lovely it is. You know, do my best. We got a picture of it somewhere. I mean, you're not talking, you know, about some mediocre building that somebody listed. This is an exquisite little group of buildings from it. And the old orchard is what's being gradually, you know, destroyed. But it is just exquisite. So we have to protect it. And I'm afraid the scale of this development would just not protect it. It would completely dwarf the listed building as well as the residents of 4 and 6 Kiln Lane and Winston Walk.
Okay, I think you get the gist. Can I put that into words, please? As accountable officers.
Carl has wording for 2, and we'll read those out now.
Okay, thank you very much.
So first reason, the proposal by reason of its unduly bulk mass would represent overdevelopment and have a negative impact on the surrounding area. The proposal would therefore conflict with policy PD1 of the local plan 2018, policies D1 and D4 of the local plan 2002, FMP1 of the Farnham neighbourhood plan, the NPPF 2019 and the Farnham design statement. The second reason would be the proposal by reason of its size and siting would result in an unacceptable overbearing impact to the neighbouring property at 3 Winston Walk. The proposal would therefore conflict with policy PD1 of the local plan 2018 and policies D1 and D4 of the Waverley Borough Council local plan 2002 and the NPPF 2019.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just come back on that, because you only mentioned 3 Winston Walk as overbearing. But I think this is equally overbearing over personally the BLM and certainly 4 and 6 Kiln Lane. You know, it is so big and it will tower over these the buildings which are not large. We're not dealing with high-rise stuff all around it by any stretch. You know, the normal size of property in this area is, I think 4 and 6, if I remember rightly, were tied to cottages. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. You know, we're not dealing with mansions that other mansions are going to affect. So I wouldn't just stick to 3 Winston Walk. I think it's the neighbours in Kiln Lane as well that are going to be very badly affected.
So we could say neighbouring properties, or do we have to be specific? Chris?
Thank you, Chairman. We've added those properties to the reason. We've got a third reason that the proposal would not outweigh the less than substantial harm to the building of local merit. It's contrary to policy HA1 of the local plan part 1 2018, HE5 of the local plan 2002, and paragraph 198 of the 196 of the NPPF.
Okay, happy to vote on that? Yes. Okay, can we have the screen up, the voting?
Councillor Keane, 4.
Thank you. So with Councillor,
I think that's carried somehow.
That's carried, that's unanimous to refuse the application.
Yeah, for the reason. Okay, right. Thank you very much. Can we move on, please? Tick tock, the clock is ticking. Right, we now move on to 2 applications which are not subject to public speaking. The first one being WA 2020-0767, land at 2 Ridgeway Cottages, Runwick Lane. A proposal for the erection of extension following demolition of existing, a revision of WA 2019-1587. And it's Carl again to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just share screen. So it's the erection of a part 2-storey and part single-storey rear extension at 2 Ridgeway cottages. So, here you can see the Ridgeway cottages terrace from the site location plan. Here you can see the terrace within the countryside beyond the Greenbelt and AGLV context. This is photo A, shows the existing single-storey rear extension to the host dwelling on the left, and on the right is the extension to the dwelling of number 3. Photo B shows the part of the rear amenity area adjacent to the existing single-storey rear extension. The proposed single-storey aspect of the extension would be set off 0.6 meters from this boundary. Photo C shows the view looking towards the rear amenity area of neighbourhood number 1. The photo shows a bulky outbuilding which runs along almost the entirety of the shared boundary. You can also see the top of the rear kitchen window on number 1's rear elevation. Photo D is sort of taken above the outbuilding and shows the sort of a better view of the rear kitchen window and the gap where the extension will extend into. You can see the block plan and the separation between the boundary there. These are the proposed ground floor plans. As you can see, the difference is essentially extending the extension by 1.3 meters. The proposed extension is the same height and length. It's just 1.3 meters wider at single-story level. Here are the first floor plans where you can see the small first floor element, which would serve a stairway to the first floor. These are the existing and proposed rear elevations of the scheme. You can see the hip past the flat roof there to sort of address some of the concerns raised previously. These are the 2 previous refused schemes at the site. WA 2018-0992 was refused on the impacts to number 1 and number 3, whereas WA 2019-1587 was refused on the impact just on number 1. So the main matters of consideration are the impact on the countryside beyond the Greenbelt and the AGLV. Officer satisfied that owing to be located to the rear and its domestic scale, it would not impact the intrinsic character and beauty of the AGLV or the countryside. And the second matter is the impact on residential amenity. So officer satisfied owing to the limited bulk of mass proposed and the existing outbuilding in number 1's garden, there would not be a loss of liberty to this neighbour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's no public speaking on this particular item. I've got a hand from Councillor Coburn. Is that an old hand or a new hand? Councillor Coburn. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Coburn, you got your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand? There's an old hand, Councillor Coburn, because you're first in line, or a new hand?
No, sorry, Chairman. Obviously, that was because I wanted to speak on the other one. I haven't put my hand up to speak on this at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I do apologise. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this row of Ridgeway cottages quite well, as I've been there on a site visit last year related to the applicant's previous application, which was refused. On that site visit, I was able to see both Hillside Cottage at number 1 and Meadowview at number 2, who is the applicant. The site visit clearly demonstrated to me at the time the potential for loss of light to the rear accommodation of Hillside Cottage at number 1. On the revised application, which we are considering tonight, the applicant has provided a sun report diagram, which is intended to support their application and somehow demonstrate the general levels of light enjoyed by Hillside Cottage at number 1. However, that diagram does not show the large trees on 2 sides of the small garden at the rear of Hillside Cottage at number 1. Whilst there might be revisions to the applicant in the new plans, the applicant's new plans, in my view, there would still be an unacceptable loss of light to the rear accommodation of Hillside Cottage. My view is, regardless of the amendments made by the applicant, any form of 2-storey extension would simply not work in this type of building, considering how small these cottages are and the impact any form of 2-storey extension might have upon the neighbouring property. My view has not changed by the amendments made, and I will be voting for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hess.
Yes, Hillside at number 1 would lose a huge amount of light from the proposed 2-storey extension, and it would adversely affect the residents there. So I can't support this application.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Carl Rosen, do you want to come back on these points? Yes, no. Anyway, Carl, you there?
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Sorry?
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Yeah, right. Well, I suppose that's anybody else wish to speak? Okay, well, subject to conditions 1 to 3 and informative 1, permission be granted. Could you please vote, please?
Against, Chair. Councillor Keane, against.
Thank you. So that's 12
Okay.
against and 1 abstention.
Right, thank you very much. Right. Guess what? We need another recommendation. Does anybody wish to propose anything?
I think we should go with what Peter Knight, Peter Clark said, which was like it's going to have adverse effect on the neighbour.
Okay. Are we all happy with that? We don't have some words to that, Carl or Chris Hench? Exact words?
Thank you, Chair. So I'd potentially suggest the same reason as before. So the proposal, by reason of its size and siting, would result in unacceptable loss of light, outlook and overbearing impacts to the adjoining property at 1 Runwick Lane. The proposal would therefore conflict with policy TD1 of the Local Plan 2018 and policies D1 and D4 of the Local Plan 2002 and the MPPF 2019. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, everybody happy with that? Do you want to vote on that? Yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, can we have the, yeah. Okay, can we have the vote, please? The polling? Oh.
For Councillor Keane.
Thank you.
Right, okay.
13 votes
Fine.
in favour of refusing.
Right, thank you very much. Right, I appreciate all your forbearance, but we're in the home straight. Last one. WA 2020 0242 135 Kings Road, Hazelmere. A proposal election extensions following demolition of conservatory. Gemma, hello Gemma.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, well, your turn to present, please.
Okay, bear with me. Right, hopefully everybody can see that. There we go. Right, so the application is in the developed area of Hazelmere. It's located to the south of the spur road of Kings Road. This area of Kings Road has a well-established and repetitive pattern of built form along the highway. The site itself comprises a 2-storey semi-detached property with a front cat slide roof with a rear dormer and a conservatory. The application for members tonight is for the erection of a parapet roof, single-storey rear extension following the demolition of the existing conservatory and the erection of a single-storey mono-pitched front extensions. So if we just have a look at the elevations, members will notice here the position of the front extension. Oops. And this position, this slide shows the position of the existing conservatory and the proposed extension to be replacing. And here we've just got a picture of the side showing the proposed front extension and the proposed rear extension with the existing. The proposed and existing floor plans demonstrating that proposed front extension would allow for an enlarged hall and the rear extension would allow for some internal reorganisation of the accommodation. Just moving to the photographs now. This is the rear of the property, or the existing conservatory. This next slide is looking over to number 133 Kings Road. You'll note they have an existing conservatory. And this is looking over at the other neighbour at 137 Kings Road, and you'll note their shared boundary treatments. Now, this photograph has been taken from the rear curtilage of 133 Kings Road and looks over towards the site, which is here. Members will note that the piece of white cloth here has been placed to depict the approximate location of the extension of the proposed built form beyond which would extend beyond the conservatory of 133 Kings Road. It's around about a metre. Now, this is a photograph of the front of the property. The proposed mono-pitched front extension would just sit here in the setback. And this slide is just to give you an idea of the sort of prevailing character of the area, and this sort of repetitive cat slide roof design is shared down the whole road. So members are being asked tonight to exercise their judgment in respect of the impact of the proposed front extension upon the character and appearance of the area, giving consideration to its overall single-storey scale and its subservient nature, and the impact of the development upon neighbouring amenity, or developments upon neighbouring amenity, noticing once again their single-storey scale, subservient forms, and in considering the presence of existing boundary treatment, as well as their juxtaposition to windows, which don't serve primary accommodation in accordance with the SPD. There's no update to this application, and therefore the recommendation remains the same, which is set out on page 131 of the agenda to grant permission subject to conditions 1 to 3 and informative 1. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Right, councillors, Councillor Deere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last push. This may seem a trivial matter to bring before the committee, but I'm the member that called it in. I was contacted by the immediate neighbour of the applicant site at 133 just before lockdown. His house and this house are semi-detached, which the elevation drawings, at least in the papers, don't show. He objected to this proposal and asked me to come and make a site visit to see what the impact, of what would be involved. As far as the rear extension is concerned, I went into the back garden and marked out on the existing boundary fence the new building line of the proposed construction. In fact, it was my photograph that seems to have found its way into the officer's presentation. It was my hanky hanging from the boundary fence. Being there, I was able to get an estimate of what's being proposed, the height of what's being proposed by reference to the features on the existing building. And having gone to all that effort, I was forced to agree with the neighbour that this application, hard up against their common boundary, would be too bulky in scale and appearance and limit the light to the neighbour's garden at number 133, particularly in the afternoon and the evening, as the construction would be to the west. And for those reasons, in my view, it's not acceptable. As far as the front extension is concerned, the add-on would render the entrance next door far less open and accessible, and would be entirely out of keeping with the street scene of Kings Road. The applicant resisted discussion with the neighbour until after permission had been applied for, which I don't think is ever a good way to go about things. The objector has no problem with the applicant having an extension, just not one that disadvantages him so much. As I've said, this is a minor matter in the scale that we deal with, things that we deal with at committee, but this is the sort of thing our residents come to us for. And when they have a good point and we're in a position to make a difference, I think we should. No planning officer has visited the neighbour's property. As I say, that was my picture used in the presentation. So I don't see how they're genuinely able to make an assessment of the impact next door. I have, and I ask this application is refused by the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Hello, Chair. Yes, I went and had a look at this application. I hadn't realised it was such a dark place with a hanger rising above it. There's not much light coming in anyway. I really was worrying about the front porch more than the back, as it takes away a lot of light from the next door neighbour's front door and front window. It was rather disconcerting, so I'll be objecting to this application. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Gemma, do you want to come back on anything that's been said?
So if you don't mind, just to respond to Councillor Martin there, obviously the proposed front extension will have a greater impact upon, greater presence, not impact, beg your pardon, a greater presence upon the occupiers of the neighbouring property. The extension is going to be juxtapositioned to a window that's actually serving a stairwell. And the door is almost like a sort of transitionary sort of phase. You know, people don't tend to linger around about doorways. So because of the two uses of those rooms, we would potentially say that, you know, while they may get a sense of the, you know, the extension there, it wouldn't cause material harm to their amenities. And to come back to Councillor Dear, yes, you're quite correct. I used your photograph. Thank you very much. It was quite helpful in making the assessment as well. But I mean, obviously, officers go out on site, you know, quite a lot. To me, I felt quite confident to be able to make that decision in respect of how it would impact on the neighbouring property without visiting the neighbouring property. I also took into consideration the fact that they've got a glazed roof on the conservatory next door that will be higher than the sort of parapet roof of the proposal, which would still allow some light into it. The majority of the sides of the elevation are brickwork. So, you know, taking all these matters into consideration, again, will probably have a greater presence, like most single-storey extensions do on, you know, these sort of typical residential developments. But in this case, there's still a lot of usable garden, there's still a lot of usable conservatory for the neighbour. You know, we feel that in this case, the harm wouldn't be enough to justify a refusal in terms of the impact on the neighbour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak?
Sorry, yeah, Chairman, if I may. So you just said you haven't been there, but you're in a position to make a judgment as to the effect that it will have from there. That seems to be, you must, you possessor of magical powers in that case.
I think it's more a case of just experience. Officers can't always go on neighbours' property to assess impacts. Otherwise, we'd be having to go to all the neighbours. Like I said, it's quite a typical extension. You know, where I'm able to look over the fence, which is what I did. I was able to look at the plans associated with 133. I was able to consider what the distance would be, the fact that there was the flat roof, you know, the fact that there is the glazed conservatory, the fact that the majority of the sides of the conservatory of the neighbour are bricked already. So, I mean, in that case, yes, I use my professional judgment. Like I say, in the perfect world, we'd be able to go to every single site to be able to do from the neighbours. But in this case, on the more smaller, minor ones, I'm more than happy with the assessment I made on site.
No, I'm not suggesting you go to all the application sites. That would be, you know, the neighbours. That would just be crazy. But given the opportunity that I took, and as an experienced property professional came to my judgment, I would hope that would have some relevance to the consideration that the members will make of the decision they're about to take. Anyway, we've probably got as far with that.
Dear and Councillor Martin, I would say by what you said tonight, Councillor Deere and Councillor Martin, from what you've all said tonight, it appears you may have predetermined your decision before you came here. Anyway, okay. Councillor Hess.
Well, I certainly haven't predetermined anything. It strikes me that the photographs were very useful, showing the next door neighbours' pitched, glazed roofed conservatory, which clearly is going to be overshadowed by the brick elevations of this proposed new replacement conservatory structure. I don't know if it is a conservatory, really. It's a lot more brickwork than a normal conservatory. You know, the design of it with that parapet wall is, in my view, overbearing. It doesn't have to be designed like that. It could be designed with a much lower soffit, still giving the applicant the accommodation they want, but not overbearing the neighbour. And I agree totally with Councillor Deere that we are elected to represent residents' interests on small matters and large. And where it affects people and they lose their light and they feel that a structure next door to them immediately on their boundary is overbearing on them, it's really quite distressing for people. You know, so I won't be supporting this application, but I would suggest the applicant comes back in with an alternative design. I know we're not here to design for them, I accept that, but they could design something far more sensitive with a lower soffit line, which wouldn't affect the neighbour in a negative way. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else wish to speak? Well, we're conundrum about whether we make a judgment whether Councillor Deere and Councillor Martin prejudge their decision really in this one.
Sorry, I didn't prejudge my decision.
I know, but you must appreciate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Should I put my hand up?
Okay. I just had a private. Councillor Deere, do you want to say anything before we move to a vote? Okay. Well, Councillor Deere, is there? Are you muted?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. What? I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I was just saying that it could be said, and it could be argued, depending on what the vote would be, you've prejudged your decision before you came here. Gemma's presentation.
By virtue of having been to the site and informed myself about the subject.
And what you said, yes.
I mean, I'll be guided by those who have experience in standards matters.
Yeah, okay.
But, as I say, my view of it was that I'd informed myself as to the validity of an objection by making a site visit. If that's something that should not have been done, then I will apologise.
Councillor Deere, it's Fiona Cameron speaking. It does sound rather as though you sort of didn't come to the meeting with an open mind, and I'd suggest that perhaps you abstain on this. I think, you know, as a ward councillor, you've made your views fairly clear, but I would suggest that that you don't take part in the vote.
In which case, I apologise to the committee and will take no further part.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would that apply to Councillor Martin as well? Fiona, would that be our rescue advice to Councillor Martin?
I apologise for going to the site and having a look at the front of it.
Yeah, okay. No. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, okay, well, we'll move to the vote on an assumption of that basis that subject
Shall I abstain?
Yes, you can. Yes. That subject to conditions 1 to 3 in informative 1 permission be granted. Can people please vote, please?
I haven't got the poll again. I got it 2 or 3
Oh, is
times.
it?
I haven't got it now.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Councillor
Did you send it
King.
again?
If you'd just like to tell me how you want to vote, Councillor Coburn.
I don't really know. Probably against, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Keane?
Against.
You're against as well. So that's two for,
Right.
9 against and 1 abstention.
Right. We need therefore, well, yeah, we therefore need another recommendation. Anybody wish to propose or propose something?
Yes, it's got to be the neighbour again, hasn't it? I think the fact that Councillor Dear said that there hadn't been any consultation.
Overbearing.
Yes.
The recommendation is to refuse, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Chairman, and
Yes.
you know, I'll support Councillor Dixon, but then we need some, you know, reasons.
Well, it's overdevelopment, isn't it?
Well,
Overdevelopment.
To refuse on the grounds of overbearing and loss of light, perhaps.
It's clearly overdevelopment.
Yes.
Are we on?
Officers, can we put some words to that? Gemma?
I can pop some words to it. It's the overdevelopment. Are we talking in terms of the, because I mean, are we talking about the 2 extensions overdeveloping the property itself, or are we talking about the fact it's the single story extension is overdevelopment because, so is it more of its overdevelopment because the 2 extensions together are disproportionate to the host dwelling? Or,
Exactly. That's
right?
it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
And obviously the impact on the single story rear extension on the neighbouring property. So what I would suggest then, result of its overall height and depth, the proposed single story rear extension would cause significant harm to the amenities of the occupiers of 133 Kings Road by way of overshadowing, loss of light, overbearing impacts, contrary to TD1 of the local plan, D1, you know, D4 of the 2002 plan, and the residential extension of SPD. And then a result of overall scale, form and design, proposed extensions would result in overdevelopment of the host dwelling. Did you want to talk about the impact on the street scene? I noticed there was a concern of the
Certainly at the front, there's a problem with the street scene.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So
and loss of light.
Loss of light. Okay, that would, so the proposed single story and front. So then as a result of its overall scale, form and design, the proposed front extension would not respect the established pattern of development within the immediate area, appearing as a incongruous feature that would cause visual harm to the character and amenity of the street scene. Something like that?
Something like that, Gemma, yes. Can we vote on that? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you then, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, you.
Or Councillor Keane for.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that's very clear cut.
12
Yes.
for, no against and 1 abstention.
All right, thank you very much. Well, my friends, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. I must say, I must appreciate all the efforts of it, you know, and I realize it was a very long meeting, but it had to be in this case because we had to catch up a little bit. So thank you everybody for your forbearance, officers, members of the public and everybody. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good Chair.
Next time.
Bye.
Night. Night.
Bye.